that digital revolution had, and we can go through a lot of other industries that face that. So I don't know if it's a parallel of cutting it in half, but it means that this can have that type of disruption. And the film industry is much more complicated. There's sets, there's guilds, there's lawyers, there's studios. It isn't quite as straightforward as somebody goes into a studio and makes an album and then they distribute it. So it isn't going to be as linear as that comparison, but it's something like that. And that's what we're experiencing. So if it feels weird, it's because it is. And again, we can be really upset about it, or I think like a lot of people sort of think about this design curve and think about where you as an individual or as a community member find your role in it. Like start to allow yourself to not know the answer to things. That's something I'm going to bring up a lot. And then the last point in this mental model, and if you guys want to read this link, when I send you the deck, it's a guy called Andrew Chen, which full disclosure is a partner at A16Z. If you read this type of news, that's like basically a hedge fund that does a lot of investing in technology and things, and they arguably had a lot to do with the last election. They also like crypto a lot. They all kinds of stuff. So caveat, caveat, caveat. But when they invest in things, they also have a thesis, and their thesis on putting into AI and creativity in a lot of ways is encapsulated by this one article and many things that they're constantly publishing. But within that, he's talking about AI and its likely effect on marketing, and we can talk about that separately. But he has this analogy in there that I think is really interesting, where he talks about the way the car disrupts the horse and buggy. Okay, so let's just keep going further back, like not MP3s or newspapers, but like the idea that once upon a time, getting anywhere involved your legs or somebody else's legs. In this case, they built this machine, it automated that process, and it allowed you to start thinking about space and time differently. You can get across town differently. And in that moment, somebody who's entrepreneurial or creative or somebody that thinks about money might think to themselves like, well, this is a good time to start a tire business. Or this might be a good time to start building gas stations. And they were absolutely right. The same way that right now, a lot of the conclusions we're drawing about what is this doing to the VFX business? What is this doing to other, like they're actually really accurately conceived. But the bigger idea is that nobody understood that a city like Los Angeles would ever be created. Suburbs didn't exist yet. The idea that I could work and have a job and a career that involved driving 50 miles a day was because I started imagining a world with cars. And that wasn't just individuals, that was government, societies. The fact that any of us have cars mean that we all suddenly have a relationship with places like Dubai and Saudi Arabia because of the geopolitics that involve fossil fuels. So I'm saying it fully changed many other things that weren't just part about tires and gas stations. And I think it's hard not to look at the geopolitics of AI. I think if anything, if anybody wants to know why is everything so crazy, is because there is this space race. There is a very real interaction with, does China discover superintelligence first? So that's a whole layer that's affecting these beautiful little things that we call films, is that there's an environment of geopolitics, economics, and things like we haven't fully imagined the way these things work, like what a city is to human beings. So again, this is, I don't know, I hope that doesn't just like put you off. I just think that sort of lets us say we don't know yet. And I think more importantly, as we get into what we're going to do in this class, this is a very decentralizing moment in terms of how much access and power individuals do have to discover what's possible. In a lot of ways, a lot of the tools that we do go back to, there's people like you guys saying, I'm just going to come up with the solution to my production. I don't know if there's anybody playing with vibe coding yet. Is that a term in anybody's head? So vibe coding is this idea that like the same idea that now I can just make pictures and make movies with keyboards, I can make software. And you don't have to wait for Microsoft to come up with that solution for your project. You can actually, I mean, did anybody see Claude Cowork that came out this week? I mean, that's a pretty big moment in like AI nerdland, and we could talk more about it. But we're getting to the point that you're not just subject to all of this stuff. Now, it's not to ignore the gigantic tech titans and powers that are circling this stuff, but where this does affect things you need to do or businesses you need to run or creativity, there's actually an incredible amount of access for you to come up with that big idea. And that's when I think about that hype cycle, and I hope this isn't a strange comparison. Early days unscripted TV, like nobody had totally come up with dating shows yet. Like nobody had come up with like competition reality. Nobody knew that I could throw chefs into a room and make entertainment watching them make cakes. Because those early days of like duh ideas, like of course that's a good idea, hadn't happened yet. And it was people like us interacting with the opportunities of the space, of the technology. So I really want us to allow us to think that way. And that's probably my favorite thing that could happen in this room between now and the end of the semester, is that I want you guys to come up with ideas, not just like a good idea for a movie. We all know you can do that. It's that, oh wait, there's this totally different way of doing this. And it's actually really inspiring on how I now get to work with somebody that's like 1,000 miles away from me or something. Like let's allow ourselves to discover those things. As you guys hopefully interact with the news cycle, which is a fire hose of information, it's literally weekly because you can't really fully process how much money is pumping through the innovation and technology of the space right now. That is equaling a lot of stuff. choose your adventure. I would, and again, you guys are gonna have this links. Like these are all links, by the way. These are all people that I think are interesting. Some of them are lean more towards ideas. Some of them are very literally about creativity, media. I'd say right here, Doug Shapiro, I think is an oracle. He's like a former like stats guy from like Turner TBS, and he's fully pivoted his way into like looking at the data from the past and looking at the data of the moment. He like keynotes a lot of big AI conferences. I think if you really, and we'll talk about some of his ideas, that's someone that I would point to immediately. These are also, and as you'll see over the course of the semester, I'm going to be linking to a lot of these people. In this space, I'm not learning from some textbook that is just somehow constantly updating itself. This is very active. And I think as any time a new tool comes out from Kling or VIA or whatever, this is sort of a selection of just about everybody that's going to publish the same article about why Kling Motion is really interesting. So it's hard to miss things once you start paying attention. But at some point, it's like, who do you trust? Who's a good vibe? I think Justine Moore is really interesting. She's at A16Z. She's kind of almost like the tool scout for A16Z. So she posts really interesting stuff. These are all different people that we're going to probably see linked in my newsletters and stuff. But I do think like this is where I want you guys to start finding your own news cycle. And very much, I'd like you guys to be like, wait, I found this online. Like, what do we have to do about this? I want you guys to challenge what we're talking about. So I'll pause there for a second. We're going to do a little bit of high level, like what is this AI stuff, just to make sure we're all kind of asking the same questions. But how are we feeling so far? Is anybody really angry or happy, sad? How are we feeling right now? Sleepy? It's Friday, first week of school. Anything? What about you? It sounds like you have been leaning in lately. How does any of this stuff resonate with you?
I mean, I feel like it's just like targeting like a bunch of different industries as well. Like I know they recently just had CES, so they were talking about just like how it's implementing robotics and
Yeah.
automation and all that stuff. So I think there's a lot of good ways to look at it. And obviously, I know a lot of people, just like creativity aspect, it's like you could look at it as like it's taking away from it, but in a lot of ways, I think it's giving a lot of people tools that like they didn't necessarily have before, just like trying new things. So
Yeah.
I think it's like an interesting space just to play around with.
Yeah, I think curiosity is a new type of like superhero skill right now. I think you'll hear a lot about how like we're kind of like flattening the floor on like skill sets and how special it is to know how to do anything. Eventually, somebody who spent a week learning how to do something is just as good as somebody who maybe thought their whole life was devoted to something, which is sounds lame, but then that means like, well, what's the differentiator? And it's going to be like an idea. It's going to be like a different vision, and that might be more interesting. That now a new idea has access to impact people because they're not stuck on that like paying dues path. It's interesting. I'll also flag that like this is an interesting thing to teach. I don't know what Ben was like last semester, but like this, like there was like when I taught this at Chapman last semester, like we had something that like showed up in the last month of school that completely changed everything. And like we basically completely changed the way, like Nano Banana Pro, have you guys heard that? Like, I mean, that completely changed the way we were doing just about everything. So this syllabus is very dynamic. And as much as we have one, we're going to probably, it would be the best thing if some amazing thing lands while you guys are here. And that's what I felt about the last cohort I taught is like, how cool is it for you guys to be skipping all the nonsense from the last 2 years of all like the bad versions of this? Like you guys are walking into like the state of the art phase when this stuff is ready to ship. Go ahead.
It's interesting when you mentioned that. I'm curious, do you think that it's a better idea to take this class in my last semester for that reason? I was actually thinking about that today.
No, and actually, I don't, because I think the point that that I'm not doing a good job making is what you're actually learning here isn't like how to use this tool.
Mm-hmm.
You're learning a mindset. And that sounds very woo woo and like I don't know what yeah that's let's all peace out. I'm saying like you're learning how to adapt to these changes in real time. Like once you understand the notion of how you can come up with an image and manipulate it and make a movie out of it, when a new better version of it, you know how to interact with it. You know what it's doing that it wasn't doing before. You know what it now could do. And we're going to get to that stage of kind of thinking about that cycle. I think the most valuable thing, and again, if you just want to answer your own question, the people that are most advancing right now are the people that were here 2 years ago that were dealing with even less advancements is because they had that internal knowledge of why does this work and what doesn't it do yet? What is the opportunity for me to solve that? Because I actually know what a good shot looks like. I think a lot about all these like set jobs, like the makeup artist or the production designer, and they're going through a lot of stuff because everything, like the makeup artist actually understands how light hits somebody's face and why that fits the rest of the palette. That person has special skills that if they can somehow interact with these tools, they do have advantages. So again, I want you guys to really recognize that this is a slippery slope on specifics. There are some great tools that I think we're focusing on because I do think they're becoming standards, but allow ourselves to realize that something better could be right around the corner. And then your ability to interact with that is that you have a mindset that knows what to do with that. So I don't think, and I even think that there's sort of like a gold rush hype cycle. Like there's the guy that stayed in New York while everybody went to San Francisco to look for gold and he just read about in the news. And he maybe said like, call me when you find the gold. And there's a nice place called San Francisco to move to. Some people ran out there and looked for gold. Those are two different personalities. There's also the picks and shovels guy that says, I'm at least going to make some money along the way. And then there's also the guy like me that I think like, I don't know if we figured it out yet, but I'm not just going to wait to read about it. I want to start building networks. I want to start being a part of this. So there's a lot of ways to think about that moment of discovery. Sorry, Habib, you have a question.
Yeah, I was going to say, everybody were great to have read here for this class. And you know, judging by how things were going in previous semesters, expect to change tools every 2 weeks. That's what I would see every time it's the class, and I would say, what happened to that awesome tool you guys were using last week? They're like, oh, that whole thing. That's what it's just the face of how things are evolving.
And again, that's either intimidating or like, wow, we're starting to understand what trajectory that stuff is on. Like one of the big ones that are getting a lot of like social leaks right now is like Cling Motion, where it's basically just like, it's a version of like Runway Act 2 that kind of existed a year or so ago. But it's just really good at just grabbing footage that you shot on your cell phone and putting you in whatever place you want it to be with facial consistency, body consistency. So it's a new type of mocap. Okay, so like you start the semester without that and you're like, all right, I got to keyframe my way through this. And then all of a sudden I can just go out into the hallway, shoot my friend running by, and I have that scene that I needed to keyframe and world build and all this stuff. So then you're starting to see how does that keep speeding up my vision, the ideas I had? And then what do I get to do now that I get to change my mind more? And that amount of work that got me there isn't like the reason I'm stuck with this idea. It's the reason why I don't really care about this. I want to make it even better because now I can try it 10 different ways. I'm sorry, my coffee's kicking in. I'm talking fast. If I'm going too fast, anybody let me know. Sorry, is there a follow-up to that?
Things that, I started in way back, CG was a new thing, and I learned Alias of the software at the time, and I spent 2 years getting really good at it. And then this other software came out called Software Launch, and that had skeletal rigging. And everybody's like, well, now you have to learn this other tool. And I was so angry at myself, feeling so that I feel like I just wasted 2 years learning this tool. Now I have to learn this other tool. That at that point, I made a pact with myself that change is going to be inevitable. And the only thing I can change is my own attitude. And my attitude is like, from now on, any new tool that comes out, I'm going to jump on it and I'm going to welcome it. So as long as you have that mindset, it's about learning principles. It's about learning, the key things. If you're good with composition, it doesn't matter what tool you're using as a cinematographer. If you're good with color, it doesn't matter how these things evolve. You're the one that's kind of trying to control these tools.
Yeah. But I hope, I'm interested in your journey and I hope you stick around. I hope by the end of the day today, you're into it. So let's just do a little bit of high level on this is less creative AI, but let's connect the dots on the big picture. So totally the terrifying image of a robot moving us around like chess pieces. Like it's very literally, that's what this does. There's things that we used to rely on human capabilities that now technology can automate and do. So that is very literally what these tools are doing in many cases. And in some cases, we're excited about all those tedious things that used to bog us down. In other cases, it makes us nervous that you're like, I thought that was something that only I did. And that's closer to our space. Just to basically piece that together, if you haven't spent time trying to make sense of this, and there are a variety of AIs. There's machine learning versus ChatGPT and what it does. So this isn't meant to overly simplify, but to connect it to what we're looking at. This is ultimately some version of what these trained models are doing. There's an input layer and there's an output layer. There's the video that came out of it, and then there's the text prompt or whatever you reference prompt on the way in. And I think they've probably gotten better at their answer, but often they even say that hidden layer, they kind of don't even totally know why it works. They're just knowing how to get consistent results out of it. So there is this sort of like mystery box sort of feeling around some of this. I'm sure there's some researchers, but I'm often amazed at how many of the people that I thought would have the best answers are kind of mostly talking about the results than they are about like the predictable processes inside of this learning process. But what it's doing is it's basically simulating what your brain does, especially what your brain does as a child. It finds patterns in the world and it eventually starts creating inferences off of repetitive patterns. So how does that square in terms of this bigger scale? So, and this is the most wonky slide, and you don't really have to totally get this, but I do think it's useful for somebody. And the "you are here" is probably the only part that matters. But when you think about this stuff, if you've been using ChatGPT over the last couple of years, its initial landing with, which was still quite amazing when people had that, I'm just typing to something that's talking back to me feeling, that was why this is such a big deal. Because machine learning and AI has been in development for decades. But that sort of Google search engine moment that a consumer was able to suddenly interact with something and it brought them value, that was the light switch. And that's why ChatGPT had like one of the most amazing adoption curves in like recent technology history, is because that chat moment that really spoke to its potential is what lit everybody up. But what was it doing? It was, so the word token, which you might hear a lot, tokens are in this case, the words. Okay. So like when people say that I have a context window of 1 million tokens, what that means is that in the thing that I can input, I can put up to 1 million words. Okay. So what it's doing is it's sentence token completion. So early days, that idea that it would start hallucinating, just say some weird stuff, that's because at its core, all it's really doing is predicting the next word. Okay, like its process of having a conversation with you is just predicting the next word, the next sentence, the next paragraph. And it's obviously doing it at an incredibly high level that it seems like a real conversation. Inevitably, it would hit some point where it started making mistakes. In a lot of ways, people started dismissing it for that reason. Eventually, that process in its early days, when people were talking about prompt engineering as like this exciting career field that everybody should get into, that's because what people were doing is they were taking that effect and then putting it into these chains of thought. And they were creating these like almost like coded, like cause and effect level program things where like, all right, give me the results of this chat that then go into this database. They were creating much more sophisticated things that sound like programming. The point is that as we entered 23, 24, that chain of thought reasoning became a feature. So when Wall Street Journal would publish an article about how prompt engineering was the job of the future, within a year or so, that was moot, because actually nobody needs to prompt engineer. It actually continues to learn off of the user behavior, the results, the upvotes, the downvotes, and it starts to be getting even better at formulating that sequence of thoughts that starts off with those token sequences. And eventually what we're sort of now, that last year was kind of the year of the launch, and I think I mentioned Claude Cowork because that's kind of the realized dream of everybody that got excited about agents, is because now we're not just having it reason. And again, reason in quotation marks, because some people even push back on, is it really thinking? It's just doing something very sophisticated. It's reasoning and doing. Okay, so you're now giving it permission to take that really sophisticated thought that it had, and then it's doing something for you. Meaning, like there's like videos that we can look at that on Cowork that just came out yesterday, where I can say, clean up my desktop, because I've given it permission, which is super dangerous. And I'm not even recommending it because a lot of people are losing stuff because it's not going perfect yet. But for the people that had it work out for them, like, you know, that scary desktop with all your files and stuff, like it just fixes it because it's a computer that knows how to do it. You've given it instructions because now it's doing stuff for you. It's booking airline tickets for you. It's booking that restaurant for you. That's the agent moment. So we're in that phase. That's where the development is, and it absolutely is being interacted with for filmmaking. And we're going to look at some tools to Samuel's point. They're absolutely taking, okay, just make me a movie about this, and it's kind of doing it. And it's not good enough by anybody's standards here, but you can't not notice that it's doing something. And then the big scary Terminator 2 moment that is either exciting because it's going to cure cancer and solve all the world's problems, or lead to humanity's demise, is this idea of superintelligence, the AGI moment, artificial generalized intelligence. And if you read Sam Altman's blogs, they're actually very excited about this. They raise money on this ambition, and that is the space race, between us and call it China or even France with Mistral. That is the big idea, that there's a belief that this is the $1 trillion valuation of a company to have this first, and it is the equivalent of getting to the moon first in terms of the geopolitics. Okay. So that's the big picture. And again, we're kind of here. Like this isn't reached yet, but you'll just hear every time they need some investors to give them more money, they'll talk about how close we are to AGI and superintelligence. I promise that's the last wonky slide. But let's go back to that idea of inference and why it can be useful. So on the most basic level, the reason I can make this little video of this cat on a windowsill is because it has been trained on many, many images of cats. So when I say the word cat, it is consistently giving me a cat. Again, that's the basic principle of what is going on when we hear about these data scrapings. When we hear about how like they have scraped the entire words of the internet, like all of them, like this is what it's now able to do. It can find these patterns. It can do that with imagery. It can do that with video now. And that's what we're understanding Google and Sora and all these tools have been having access to, for better or for worse. And that's a big copyright conversation. So to kind of like then put that into context, and why is this exciting for a creative? Like, let's take movies and business out of this. If you're just like an abstract artist funded by the British government, and you get to just play, or you can be someone like Rafiq Anadol. I don't know if you guys follow his work. He's more of a true artist. Like this experimentation that inside that black box, I can give it information and it can come out in some way that I've instructed it to. Like that is this new magic thing. Okay, we've gotten used to it of like I can chat to it and chat back. I've gotten used to it that I can prompt engineer it and it can do things that I need it to do. We're getting used to it that I can talk to it and it can give me video, audio, or imagery back. Okay, now I can also put images into it and it can make videos out of that. I could take the data of the city of Los Angeles and say make a song out of that. I can take the information of what sound does and I can say make me a picture out of that. Okay, so we're now into this like idea that again, if we just allow ourselves to think like artists, this is an incredible superpower to sort of start to add new sort of visualizations, interpretations, expressions that then might just be your research process. I don't know how that affects you making a movie, but that's what the muscle flexing here is really doing. And that's where a lot of the innovation's playing with is like what happens when we can give it this type of information and what does that do consistently or usefully. And that's kind of what's happening in all these layers. Have you guys heard this term multimodal? Does anybody know that term? Okay. So when we talk about multimodal, we're talking about the fact that these tools have moved on past text. Okay. So I'm going to pull up my ChatGPT app. Okay. So we're used to the fact that I can text and have a text conversation. Okay. So does anybody else have this app? ChatGPT app, not the desktop. Okay. So there's this white circle, right? So this is the one everybody's seen the Spike Jonze movie, Her. Are you familiar with it? Where you kind of had like a conversational girlfriend. So that's this button, right? So this, I can turn it on. Actually, I hope I don't have to update my app. Or is the internet bad here? That might be the other thing. If I do it here. Oh, this magic trick usually works better when the internet's working. Let me see if I can do it. I wonder if, actually, we didn't check if my mic works on here. All right, let's try it here.
Sure. Let's dive in. Feel free to let me know exactly what you'd like to try or experiment with, and we'll go from there.
Okay, so not that magic of a trick anymore we've gotten used to, but the point is it's not interacting with text, it's interacting with the sound of my voice, right? If we keep looking at the way this is set up, there's also a video camera button. God, maybe I have to turn off something. There's a video camera button. Okay. All right, can you see anything right now?
Yep. I can see what looks like a classroom or a lecture room setting with some students sitting around. Everything seems to be working just fine on my end.
Okay. Go away. All right. So the point is that from a technological level, again, allow yourself to start understanding what's happening here. It's interacting with visual information. It's not just converting it into text and then some algorithmic thing turns it into code that equals picture. It's seeing you. And that might even open up all kinds of privacy concerns, and it should. And if you think about what Meta's doing by putting headsets in your living room, yeah, they can see all your stuff. But the point is that was what multimodal mean, and that's what the technology is built on. That's why I'm saying that chart of like sentence completion, we're now in this phase that it's doing something much more sophisticated. So what does that mean? That means it can hear what you're doing. Like a lot of this vibe coding business, like I don't type anymore. Like in general, and I need to make sure we've set it up properly. I just talk to my computer. There's an app called Whisperflow, which is like the greatest thing that ever happened in my life because I can literally just in my car send emails while I'm just talking. I can just think about an idea I'm thinking about, and then ChatGPT organizes that thought. That's because it's interacting with my voice. It is allowing me to skip that painful Butterfingers moment that I have to type everything correctly for it to understand what I wanted to say. It's just hearing me. So that's one aspect of multimodal is the audio, but there's also the visuals. So if you're interacting with one of these tools and you're inside of like Premiere or Unreal Engine or something and you're having trouble with something, you can screenshot the error message you got, send it to the app and say, okay, what did I do wrong here? And it's not looking at text, it's looking at your screen. And actually Gemini now has a real-time version of this that, unless it creeps you out, you can have it just watch your screen while you're doing stuff. And while you're learning a new platform, while you're trying to write something, you can say, hey, what did I do wrong here? And it's like, oh, I've been watching this whole time. What you need to do is use this command over here. So again, that's multimodal. Okay, now why is there a little robot in this picture? Because that's the point. Okay, so if you look at NVIDIA's presentation at CES, they spend very little time talking about this stuff. They're talking about robots the whole time. And the reason that that robot will ever run is because it is gathering this multimodal data. Okay, so like one of their biggest like product pitches is that a car factory is just run entirely by robots. Okay, the reason those robots know how to move this from here to there is because they've developed spatial intelligence. They understand what is 3 feet away. They understand what that sound means when they're told to do something. So what we're literally doing, whether we like it or not, by interacting with these things, is we're feeding a giant brain with video and audio information that will eventually feed back to these companies and the other products that they want to do. Again, that can either creep you out or just lets you start to connect the dots on what is all this sort of doing. And then maybe one day that robot helps you, or you want to build that robot too. But that's this arc of multimodal technology, is that's what it's ultimately really doing, but that's how it can start being a tool for you, right? Agentic AI, just to put a little bit more teeth on this, this is that video that I was telling you about. So this is this new tool called Cowork. It's basically Claude code, but now made for regular people. But just like watch this like little moment. Oh, it's not letting me go full screen. So that's a messy desktop. You can sort of watch the conversation that he's having on the left. And because it's given permission to interact with his or her computer, it just fixes things. Okay, so that to me is as good a magic trick as Google search. I mean, that's insane. My desktop, you can see it, it's not that great. I put this on the left just for fun. That if you guys are interested, and we can call it right now if this sounds interesting. My first interaction with an agent is this tool called Bordy. Here, let's see if I can try calling it. Bordy is like an agent connector. Here, let's call Bordy.
Hey, this is Bordy.
Hey, Bordy, I'm really trying to build my network with people at USC. Are there any good professors that I should be meeting with?
Great to hear from you, Fred. You've always been intentional about bridging creative tech and education, so it makes sense you'd want to connect with US-based professors who are active in AI, media, or cinematic storytelling. When you say professors, are you looking for folks leading research in generative AI, those running film media programs, or more industry-facing educators who are plugged into both academia and the creative tech world?
There's this one guy called Habib. I can't remember his last name, but is he on LinkedIn? Can I connect with him?
Thanks for sharing that, Fred. There are a few professors named Habib in the US, especially in creative tech and media.
All right. Anyway, you get the idea. This tool, it's basically scraped LinkedIn, and it's become like this instant network connector. I mean, I encourage it. Again, I it was a little bit of courage just to trust something with my phone number and stuff. But as you can see, and it's going to send me an email in a second, like, oh, we got cut off. So it's basically linked up where you have like a 20-minute conversation with it of like, what do I want to do with my life? And then it just starts saying, here's some people you should meet. And then it reaches out to those people for you. It connects you on email. And I've met some really good people. But I'm just saying that was my first experience with an agent. And you can see that that's doing more than just giving me results on a search. That is doing. Okay. And that's the way they started thinking about this. And we will meet agentic filmmaking tools in this course. But that is sort of the other term that I bring this up because this is terms. These are vocabs that I want you guys to be getting caught up on. And then lastly, this idea of vibe coding. Okay. So we'll talk about vibes for a second. This guy on the bottom left, that's Andre Karpathy. Has anybody ever heard of him? Okay. So in Nerdland with AI, Andre is like a god. He worked at OpenAI. He worked at Tesla. And I'd say like for people, any of you that are like, I actually kind of want to challenge myself and speak the higher level of this stuff, he's a very good communicator. Again, he's not fully speaking to us down here, but he is not that far removed from like, if you want to like really dig in, I think he does incredible just 45-minute sessions explaining LLMs. It's constant. He's a great follow on Twitter. So he had this famous tweet. This is the tweet around the world on February 2nd, 2025, just barely a year ago. That he introduced this term vibe coding. And what was he talking about is that there was a new suite of tools where he was basically sitting at his computer using that whisper flow tool that I just mentioned to you guys, that he's just talking. He's removed himself from having to type. In one window, it's the LLM that's processing what he's saying and then giving it sort of actions. In another window, it's actually interacting with code. And then he's got a deploy button. And he is just flowing with his programming. He's just talking to his computer, and it's just, he doesn't have a room full of devs. He doesn't have a bunch of coders. He's just making stuff. Okay. And you can see how he talked about it. A lot of people in Silicon Valley are obsessed with Rick Rubin. Does anyone know who Rick Rubin is? Used to run a Def Jam record label, Beastie Boys, and like Run DMC. He's a very famous music producer. The reason he became like an avatar for this movement is because he will famously tell you he doesn't know how to make music. He's not actually a musician, but he is excellent at producing it, and he's created incredible careers. And that's sort of the big idea, is that you don't actually need to know how to code. Back to our world, you don't actually need to know how to do a lot of this filmmaking stuff. You need to have the ability to orchestrate it, and that's kind of this image, is that your ability to orchestrate and understand the execution or understand the end user goal, that's becoming the skill set. Okay. Which is either exciting or a bummer for people that feel like that their identity is built on the tools they've learned, because they're changing a lot. But I'm saying this is sort of the mainstream right now. Okay, that's a year ago, and now we're at the point that Claude Cowork tool took something that still looked like you're looking inside of like the Matrix, and there's a bunch of things that, like, to the average user, what this looked like a year ago was still a little bit disconcerting. Claude Code or Cowork, excuse me, it looks like your friend. It looks like something that is now accessible. So this ability, if you start following people like Ali K. Miller's, like a big LinkedIn person, you're seeing like the way that businesses are running. Like, this is what being at a company looks like now. You have like multiple agents doing things for you. They're all vibe coding software solutions. Like, it is not some guy in Silicon Valley doing this. I feel like this is anybody now. So that's the big idea. And I want you guys, because we're going to encounter this, we might even have guest lecturers like that. That's what they're here to show you. And I'll even show you some things that I've started building that are just like tools for me. Like, I don't know if I'm ever going to make money off them, but they solve problems for me. And that's kind of what this is pointing at, is that this isn't just being passive in your consumption of this stuff. Is you're like, wait, why doesn't it do this? Why can't I do that? All right. Pausing there for a second. That's, again, I told you that was like the only like techie stuff that we're going to really do. Questions, concerns? You said that too fast. Why are we actually talking about this stuff? Anybody? How about you? How are you feeling?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm feeling good. I don't know. I guess I'm thinking like, how can AI be a resource as opposed to like a replacement? And I took a class last semester about that, like media for AI. So just hearing you say all these things is helpful. And I'm also thinking back to like when you called, was it Brody?
40.
40.
Yeah.
And how you gave it very specific instructions, but he missed like,
I think that the recording was bad.
yeah, but like he missed like that you said USC.
I think it sounded like USA to him. It's a bad, yeah, it's a bad recording.
You know, it's like there's a lot of Khabibs, but I'm like, if he heard USC, like he would know. Let me specifically look for.
Yeah, but I blame the microphone. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the
Yeah.
the device. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's interesting because it just shows you like the importance of like still needing a human to like explain to it
Yeah.
specifically
Yeah,
what
sure.
they're looking for.
So later on in this presentation, I'm going to introduce this idea of context engineering, which I think is the evolution of prompt engineering, and I think it might start to address that. But yeah, I mean, like, I think, like, there was people that were portrait painters that that had built their entire lives around the value of capturing the photorealism of somebody with their paintbrush, and then this camera thing came along, and sort of rendered them totally obsolete, and that must have felt terrible to that replacement feeling. But I think painting got a lot more interesting once the value wasn't how real something looked, but how expressive Jackson Pollock could be, or what Andy Warhol could do with a paintbrush. Like, it almost like liberates that form to maybe do something else. And in some ways, photography didn't just do portraits. All of a sudden, that ability to capture a moment allowed photojournalism to exist. So I think that's sort of this sort of like challenge your sort of skeuomorphic moment of like, what does this do now? And allow yourself to maybe reflect. And we're going to get to that in a second. But that to me is sort of that replacement narrative. I don't deny it. I mean, it's hard to ignore that there's sort of a lot of tedious jobs that are absolutely sort of suddenly replaceable. But I think there's other things that we've seen history prove pretty regularly, that if you're actually the type of people that I think a film student at USC is, that you're operating at a higher level, I think this is your hitting the ground running kind of device. Yep.
Yeah, I think, when photography came out, painters thought they were obsolete, but they weren't. Photography became its own art, and you still have painter in it. Similarly here, AI filmmaking can become its own field. It doesn't displace the other kind of filmmaking, which is makes a new one, just like machine learning did when it came into.
Yeah, and that's actually ironically one of the next slides. So we're going to hear somebody. What's your question? Sorry, what's your name?
Vici.
Vinci?
Vici.
VG.
Vici.
Vici.
Yeah.
All right. I'm failing this pop quiz today, though.
Will this class cover anything like how AI gonna help us
how AI gonna help a director interact with their actors
Oh, yeah.
and cameras.
Oh yeah, I think that's actually 2 weeks from now. Actually, not necessarily cameras, virtual cameras, at least. And then there is a hybrid work model, which we can open up. And if that's something that people in this room are really passionate about, we can adapt. That's what I'm saying. The syllabus is very adaptable. I'll show you what I think is the today version of growth. But if there's things that we're really passionate about, I want to hear that. That's actually one of my biggest questions for homework, because I want to hear what do you guys want out of this. But thank you for bringing that up. So I think we're starting to get to the fun stuff. What is cinematic AI? I think this guy's statue is outside. Is it Edward Muybridge? Am I saying that name right? Or does he say Edward? I don't know. So look, this is, has anybody seen this before? Is this like old school here at USC? Obviously by some accounts, the first moving image or the first film. Do you know the story behind it? Is this like lore here at USC? I would assume it is. But the simplest thing, and we'll move on, is that the existence of this is the product of a need for automation and a problem. Okay, like they wanted to prove that all four legs were off the ground. That was sort of somebody's question out loud. And instead of taking one picture and missing it, taking another photograph and making sure that we're probably going to have to take a lot of pictures. And instead of just taking a lot of pictures, they said, let's take a lot of pictures in sequence, and then let's let ourselves watch those pictures in sequence. Like that basically birthed the notion of the illusion of motion, which I even throw back to a lot of people are worried about how real or fake AI is. Well, it's always been fake. That's an illusion of motion. It's not really moving. It's a technology solution that's letting you imagine that. I think the other kind of historical moment that I look back to a lot. Is this also a very familiar image? Everybody seen the Lumiere brothers or train arrival? So obviously the legend is that much like you guys in this room, somebody was in some other room, and as this train arrived, they freaked out and they jumped out of their seats. The point is that in that moment, this very real-looking image affected their relationship with reality to the extent that it made them leap out of their seats, which is what a good horror movie does. Did anybody see this video on social media earlier this year? Did anybody see that? So you were among 300 million people that probably at first thought this was real and thought that was insane home security footage of, whoa, those bunnies are huge. And how did they get on that trampoline? And then very quickly, it wasn't hard to figure out that it was fake. And then people started making deer jumping on trampoline, and then the social remix filter started. But the point is that this is that kind of same moment, which is that there's a new type of media, there's a new type of interaction, there's a new type of social experience that was sitting in a movie theater. This is looking at something on your phone where your relationship with reality is changing. And again, I could spend all day talking about this stuff because this is the stuff I'm most worried about. But I think let's just keep allowing ourselves to remember that there's things we can learn from of how did we adapt to that. And at least in the case of this room, how did this become a business or a career field or a creative space? Knowing that that's what people are doing. They're imagining something is real when it's not. This is a two-dimensional wall. I mean, there's nothing actually here, but for a moment we're experiencing bunnies, right? So to sort of go to some of the things you were just saying, Hidea. Okay. B minus on my pop quiz. Maybe C plus. This is Cristobal Valenzuela. I'm pretty sure this guy's spoken here. He's sort of the founder of Runway. You guys familiar with Runway? It's like a video model. He, his social feeds are really interesting. Obviously he's there to show you his product, but, he also really thinks about the intellectual journey of all this stuff. And it's a very long tweet. But I think he hits something that I think Habib even just alluded to, is that I think if we're only thinking about this in terms of like, well, what does this do for movies? We're sort of at the same place that theater critics might have been when they couldn't imagine what movies were yet. Like that theater critics thought that's what actors and scripts and directors did. They didn't totally get that we could go on adventurous missions with Tom Cruise or go to places with Guillermo del Toro. They weren't thinking about it yet. And they were limited to their imagination there. Again, we could talk about photography and painting in the same way. The short version is like, allow yourself to wonder. Maybe it's not true. Maybe this is, at the end of the day, this is just cheaper movies. And I would say I would be very, very disappointed if everything I've currently devoted myself to is that the most interesting thing that AI can do is just make cheaper movies. I think that'd be a bummer. And I actually talk to my consulting clients a lot about that if the only way they're processing this opportunity is to bring their budgets down, I personally think they're missing out on the more interesting phase of this stuff. But from a founder who wants to have $1 billion valuation and make lots of money, he also wants us to think that this is a new medium. But also allow yourself to see the upside of that you may be in a position to be leading that, taking the inspiration you know from the scripts you've read and the learning you're doing here. How are we actually discovering what is that intersection with what's going on in the gaming universe? What is that intersection with fan fiction? What is the relationship that could be possible when these things move at a different speed? This guy's interesting. I think by most accounts is a definitional AI bro, which are among the sort of the antagonists of the internet these days. But I'd say he nets out a lot more value, and you'll see that a lot of the resources we pull into our class are frankly free education that he throws around of like his workflows and how is he making that commercial. It's a guy called PJ Asaturo, who has a background in traditional media. And this is an interesting tweet. And again, it might even be inflammatory. And I hope this doesn't, I'm just showing you the debate right now. Like what's going on inside people that are living in this space. And on the bottom, there's this guy, John Fountain. We can pull up the whole tweet. And again, you guys will have a link. You can read it to yourselves. He is a traditional animator. He's someone that, in this tweet that he first sends, going after the AI bros, is like, we used to do everything by hand. This is what it looks like. This is what human creation looks like. And he's there to proudly talk about his craft. And PJ writes back, and if you really read through it, he's not there to hate on him. He actually says, people like you inspired me. I'm happy for you. But the point he makes, and again, this is either an inflammatory thing or like the state of the debate, because this got reposted a lot. And it wasn't just people shit posting. It was people saying, finally somebody spoke to me. Is that like someone like on the legacy side, at its core, and maybe in a place like USC, you guys are inside his argument, which is that that's really defending, let's say, the 100,000 or so artists who have the skills to adapt to new film technology, and they have access to opportunities, they have access to relationships, and that's wonderful. And again, maybe you guys are those people, and I wish, at the end of the day, I just want people to have jobs. Let me just clarify what I'm here to do. What he'll say is like, what's happening in the work he's doing, the businesses he's building, and what he represents a whole wave of people that in the last 2 years have leaned in, is this is the 200+ million people around the world who don't have the relationships, the access, and it could be any one of us, whether we live in LA or in Nigeria. And did you guys see the billion follower summit? Did that hit your news feeds at all? So last week or the week before, is over break, in Dubai, there was a pretty giant event by creator economy standards that invited everybody from Mr. Beast to other like major creators, obviously heavily weighted on the local sort of communities of sort of that part of the world. And among the many things there was a big summit about the state of creator economy, state of influence. I mean, it was a pretty big deal. You should look it up and you might get other stuff out of it. But one of the things they did is that Google created $1 million prize for who can make the best AI film. And like thousands of submissions from all over the world. And they're using pretty state-of-the-art tools at this moment in time. So the movies are pretty good by counts of like, are they watchable and are they good stories? And the person that won is this guy from Tunisia that nobody'd ever heard of. Like he didn't go to any fancy school. He didn't like know anybody special. And if you look through the credits, for better for worse, he pretty much did the whole thing by himself. Okay, so that's just like a level set. That's that floor that I'm talking about. That's that sort of new flattened landscape. That what do you do with this? Does that freak you out? And I think, I thought I had a big advantage here. Or does that actually liberate you? Because even that guy doesn't have all the knowledge that comes from having been a filmmaker like Habib, or having the knowledge that comes from being here. So again, try to think about this in this new landscape, which is what I think ultimately someone like PJ is saying, like, we need to sort of reimagine this landscape of opportunity. Now, I have questions about supply and demand and what happens when there's millions of creators, like how many people can actually make money, but at least people are getting access. What were you going to say, Habib?
Yeah, I think one thing I think about, a lot of my friends are concept artists in film, and I feel for what they're going through with people's access to generative imaging, but I also think about 95% of the films you watch were designed by the top 10 concept artists. Only 10 people hire women to do all the work. Now, what happens if you have 200 million people bring their thoughts to paper?
I mean, you're minimally going to get other interesting ideas and different cultures that have access to express something different. And I think that is where, like, again, at least as a consumer, these things create more interesting opportunities. Again, I have economic issues with this stuff of how does it really net out. But in terms of access and what's available, it is a big flood that we're in the midst of.
What should happen is the tool is using images of artists, they should get paid for it. You know?
And that's part of the
So
economic
the
debate too. Yeah.
The tool knows exactly what percentage of what artwork it was using. So it's just a matter of someone switching on the monetary, you know, an artist saying, yes, I agree to have my concept, you know, be used for payment.
Yeah, no, there's the whole ethical conversation we can explore. We've been going at this for an hour. I don't know what the policies are for breaks. What do we do here at USC? Do we take like hour breaks or at the hour or?
Usually about halfway through, so
Okay.
you could go
Well,
another.
okay, because we're at a good transition. Sorry, somebody had a question. Yeah. What's your name?
My name is Tyler.
Tyler. Nice to meet you.
I think about this a lot, but
I hope so.
at the same time, going off of the creativity, if an AI is able to know exactly what the creator wants, then yes, it is the creator's creativity. But right now, I feel that when someone puts in a prompt and what comes out of it, a lot of it is a combination of what comes before. I think AI is adding context to it. So to say that the creator created it and takes credit for it would be very different than, please correct me if I'm wrong. It would be very different than someone who draws it, for example. I think would it be a good parallel to say that if AI can generate, let's say, entire orchestra for a movie, like the entire score for a movie, for example, then traditionally composer like Hans Zimmer, there's still a few people who make, I don't know, like 70% of the Hollywood films, right? That means now 100,000 people can start scoring for films now, but will that be fair?
I mean, look, this is the School of Business classes. I think you might be asking, and I'm not dodging that. I'd say I have opinions about this stuff, and I'm happy to tell you what I think. I also think there's lawsuits playing out, which are educating the answers to your question. Suno, is everybody familiar with a tool called Suno? That's a music generation tool that currently there are literally artists on Spotify that are getting more hits than humans. And they're very successful. And you can blame the consumers that enjoy listening to them, even when they find out that it's AI. So you can decide what's fair when a consumer ultimately has the final say. But Suno got sued by the Warner Music Group, much like when Napster got shut down by record labels. And interestingly, the big bad lawsuit that's aimed to shut down the injustice, the unfair treatment of the underlying IP, they're in business together now. Like they're like, hey, we hate you so much that we think we should work together. So I will say that my opinion is that at the end of the day, once we start talking about rights and ownership, we are talking about money. And there's way too many lawyers and representation businesses that take fees off of everybody's money for this to just be purely about what's right and wrong. And those are very powerful structures that in some ways have insulated this town to be a stable economy. And for people to move to a place like Los Angeles and be able to afford a mortgage because we've stabilized rates and we've stabilized businesses. So that this isn't all good or bad, but it's certainly not about right and wrong, in my opinion. I think it's about perhaps some version of institutional fairness. And I think at the end of the day, these things play out in court. Like, so it doesn't even matter what I think. But just to sort of challenge that notion. I mean, I think, and I'm not a music historian, and I'm happily shot down if this is a bad thesis, but I'm just going to try this on you guys. Like, I think about the blues as a music era, right? Which even has its roots in Africa. That you could argue that a lot of that is sort of like the echoes of sort of a culture that was expressing itself with something that wasn't even well documented because the technology didn't exist to document it. It was oral history. And arguably, like the blues is kind of this experience that, you know, one artist would borrow a guitar play from another. They'd even openly celebrate that from each other. That spawned so much of the music that we're even still listening today, that from an artistic level, a lot, I don't know if it benefited, but happened because there wasn't this level of questioning of who owns what and who's. Now, is it tragic that maybe those people should have gotten rich? Like maybe the estate of Robert Johnson should be infinitely wealthy because of creating blues? Maybe. So it's probably even imperfect what I'm referencing, but I'm saying just from a pure creative point of view, these other phases of sort of human art and history, it's interesting to think what happened when the lawyer didn't show up. Like what happened when culture mitigated it. There's probably a better version, to go to Habib's point, and this is something that blockchain people talk about. Is there some type of technology solution that starts to recognize these moments and sort of measures, okay, how much of an influence? Like, because when you talk about these data sets that somebody scraped some artist's work, like we're literally talking about like a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of something that you could even document. I don't know if that's worth millions of dollars, but it seems to ethically be worth something. They're like, okay, well, that was mine. Okay, so at the end of the day, like there could be a better system that we could think about that solves that feeling that something weird's happening. My point is, I think it's being played out by somebody's lawyers, and I don't think they're really worried about that tiny feeling. I think they're just worried about their interests, and they're just trying to make sure they keep making money, which is what the music industry did. If you think about that, it got cut in half by Napster. By the mid 2010s, they restructured their businesses around Apple Music and Spotify. They're back to making decent money, but the artist didn't win. It has never been harder to be a musician and to make money. That's why artists tour so much, and that's why they have to create all this merch and all these businesses. So I'm just using these as historical references that I think you're right to ask the question. And then at the end of the day, as a creator, you need to find what is authentic to you and what is your point of view. I think somebody in all of this might go back to saying, I'm making 16 millimeter films. I'm not even using digital video because I care about something even more authentic and more impossible to clone than that recorded film image. That's an artist expressing themselves. But I think I personally think these debates get very interesting when they're really asking a business question, which there's plenty of lawyers that can answer that question with their interests in mind. That's just, again, I just told you my opinion. I don't want to sound like I'm telling you what you should think, but I'd say challenge your assumptions. Like, what is that question really about? And I think that if it's really about that little piece of data hiding in that data set that belonged to somebody's comic book, like, it's surrounded by millions of other bytes of information. Like, how could you properly reimburse that in a way that what's interesting is, like, my friend Tommy Petrov, who, if we're really interested in this copyright stuff, I'd love you guys to keep meeting people. Like, my friend Tommy runs a company called copysite.ai. Their business is built around the idea of looking at final outputs coming out of like these image or video models. And it's literally diagnosing how much of this is copywritten material, like how much of this was transformative and truly something original, as much as that can possibly be documented. Because remember something else about copyright. This isn't just about the person getting screwed over because their data got stolen. If you're a creative person using these tools, you want to go exploit what you made. That's what the U.S. Copyright Office is there to do. It's to help you copyright your AI film. And so you need to be able to claim that what I made is human made. Like, do you guys know the whole thing about chimpanzees taking pictures? You heard this reference point? It's like if a chimpanzee takes a picture with a camera, that picture can't be copyrighted because U.S. copyright law is about humans making stuff. Okay, so right now in much of the debate, the copyright is basically like AI is basically a monkey that doesn't have human identity to declare that it's copyrightable. So the other flip side of what you're asking isn't just who's sort of being taken advantage of. It's that once you go down the road and truly create something original and something that you have no intention of ripping off George Lucas or anybody, you then still want to go be a successful creator. So that's the other side of the copyright coin. Actually, we're kind of jumping ahead of my deck, but because you asked the question, I'll show you that. Does that at least engage on your question? Okay. And again, I don't want to be right about this. I'm just telling you that's how I've had to make sense of it. And again, I think it needs to react to what you want to do as an artist or as a business person. We could pause here, but this is the section of the deck that I'm actually going to ask you guys for homework to just watch any of these movies. I'll just give you some context. Do we want to just watch something and stop hearing me talk for a second? Do you guys want me to like show you a cool movie? Is that like a fun way to break for a minute? Or who wants to keep going? Quiet. This is a very quiet room. How do I get you guys to talk to me? You want to watch a movie?
How long is it?
They're all shorts. I'll just give you a quick breeze through of this section of the deck, which again, part of your homework is like, I want you guys to watch these. You have to watch all of them, breeze through, find the ones. Next week, I really want to hear which ones spoke to you, whether because you hated them or because you really liked them. And then I want to use that as a basis of what do we want to make in our class. I'll just quickly breeze through this first slide. Ancestra is probably one of the more important films in the space. It's a filmmaker called Eliza McNitt. She worked with Darren Aronofsky and his production company Primordial Soup, which is an AI studio based in New York now. She is a really, really awesome, I don't know if she comes from here, but she's an amazing established like VR emergent media filmmaker. And she made this film, which we can watch it. How about we'll take a vote on the ones I suggest. So this is option one. And this is a hybrid production. This was part regular photography. And then she used this to tell the story of how she almost died at birth. So it does something that I want you guys to really think about here as we think about all these opportunities. I want you to think about what's impossible currently. What's a film that AI is going to help you make possible? And I think this is a good example of things that she chose in that vein. I actually think this is one of my favorite movies. It's called Arrow. We'll come back to that, but I would vote on this page for Ancestra. On the bottom left, if you guys go down the road and meet Neuralviz is one of the most sort of kind of beloved like AI creators because he's truly built his own sort of brand and voice, and it's very funny and strange. On this page, these are some of my latest. I updated this for stuff that's come out. I put in Beggar's Canyon. This is a very controversial film. This is like an anonymously made film that's basically Star Wars fan fiction, as I say that in the hallowed halls of George Lucas. So this is a particularly well realistically executed. There's still cracks on it, but it's interesting. So I'd say that one's interesting. There's also, is anybody here a big Nintendo Mike Tyson's Punch-Out fan? This has basically brought that game to life, the Punch-Out one. So I'm just giving you a tour of these. So far I would suggest Ancestra or the Star Wars film. These are films from this last year. This Lily film, this is the film that won that Billion Summit that I mentioned. Okay, so I'd flag that on some account this is the best film in the world by somebody's measure. This bottom right one, I'm just going to celebrate. This is my student from Chapman, and he just won the student award at the Chrome Awards, and this was his like 90-second trailer. Actually, I think we should watch this one real quick because I think it just shows like what any of you are capable of. And this, it's only 90 seconds, but this won the Chrome Awards. He's a great example of someone that I think if he was a USC student, be a big student of Habib's in terms of all the virtual production that he does. He brought a lot of Unreal Engine and kind of like more virtual models to how he thought. But let's watch this for a second. Oh,
this morning, 2 astronauts.
I should have given that a second. Isn't there like a setting preset or something?
Yeah, should.
There we go.
This morning, 2 astronauts will make history as they ascend Skylift for the first time. Destination, Station Zero, the world's first orbital data center.
Designed to run for centuries without interruption, Station Zero is the first step toward a truly planetary cloud.
Crowds from around the world have gathered at the base of the Skylift, eager to witness the inaugural human ascent along its Earth-to-orbit tether.
Only one first time. Don't miss it.
So I bring it up because I hope that's inspiring. Like he's batting away commercial work right now because he hasn't even finished college yet. And because he was in this Chrome Awards, which I did, by the way, let Ben Hansford's class from last semester know. I introduced it to him. They could have competed more. We didn't see enough USC people submitting. But Chrome Awards was like an AI film competition that happened last November. But I just think it's a good example of like, for anybody that has questions for me or Habib about careers and where are we going with all this stuff, I think this is a good example that in this moment, there's a lot of demand for being a good storyteller with these tools, like big time. I had incoming daily of people that are running businesses are like, who's a really good one? I'm like, you got to go find these people and you got to pay them the right money because they even think it's still cheap. It's no longer cheap. Like people are making good money. I hope that lasts. I hope that flood of access doesn't flip that. But I think right now you guys are in a good place to follow in this guy's footsteps. So that was short. I do want to come back and allow the other films. Cinema That Never Was is a really interesting movie. I'm just going to show you a little bit of this because I think this might challenge us a little bit.
Do you remember this scene? A woman steps into a shadowed room. the faint outline of a chandelier cast fragile patterns on her face. Her expression is one of hesitation, a moment suspended, as though she is about to speak, but never will. The music swells, soft violins trembling on the edge of some unknown resolution. Do you remember it? Surely you must. And yet, you don't? Because this film was never made. What does it mean to forget something that never existed? A frame, a scene, an entire story lost not to time, but to absence. Cinema, our shared dreamscape, is not only what we've seen, but also what we've imagined, what we've almost had.
Yeah, I'll let us watch it on here. But that's like a year old. And I think it's interesting. You also notice that Rowdy's film, he still was trying lip sync. And I'm going to challenge you guys to not just make like poetic films with voiceover. It's very easy to make a movie like this right now. The edge of whether or not we're really there yet is going to be lip sync and how well you guys think it executes. But I do think, sorry? That's entirely generative. So, and I show that to you that show you that aesthetic of cinema, whether it's stolen or inspired, whatever adjective you want, it's available. And again, it's like, okay, am I just replicating the past? In his case, he's doing a little bit of an essay. He's kind of like throwing out an idea. I encourage you to say, okay, what do I get to do when now I get to sort of, I don't need to like work with my DP to find that exact type of film, then light it exactly to sort of capture that 1960s French New Wave look. I could just do it and start speaking that language. And what does that mean to my story and my film when I'm just going to start speaking that language? I didn't need, for better for worse, to tap into that crafts work that maybe we all find to be a beloved part of what we call making movies, but it's available. And again, you as an artist can choose to shun all of this. I just want you to know it's available. Okay. That one's interesting for that reason. I think it challenges some of us who love old movies. This is a historical page. We don't have to spend a lot of time here, but I just want to tell you why it's here. Absolved. Have you guys heard of Paul Trillo? He's a very, very advanced, emergent media filmmaker. This is probably 2 years ago. I'll just show you a taste of it. This was kind of like one of those films that was just operating at a different level. Hybrid. This is like this really strange music video set at the Louvre.
To hear from my heart. When I realized it wasn't too late yet, by the time that I talked, it was. The tears that I cried, you were looking at it like it's water on horns. You side of myself, 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 myself,
Yeah, we'll pause there. It's a little bit longer. Obviously, a very deliberate commentary on art, putting it in the Louvre and sort of exploring. And again, hybrid, and he's getting to explore. And there's a lot of BTS on this. This wasn't just somebody tapping away in there. And this was also tools from like 2 years ago. So it was even harder to achieve this. I'd say replicating that today is probably a different effort. And that's actually something I want to play with you guys as a class assignment downstream is I want you guys to find films. And as you watch these, over the weekend, I want to challenge us one weekend to just say, like, how do we replicate something that we saw? Like, how do the tools of today show how we're just borrowing from even these AI filmmakers? This RT2 remake is a bit of it's just a fun thing. I think it belongs in a museum. We're not going to watch it because it's 2 hours long. But my friend Nem, who's currently the head of Genco, which is the sort of external-facing studio at Promise Studio. You guys heard of Promise? Promise is probably one of the more meaningful AI studios in terms of how much funding they have and the type of work incoming business they're getting. He's running their external studio business. But before he got those jobs, during the strike, again, going back to that sort of early days of where I come from, a lot of people were out of work, so they took the movie Terminator 2, because it's the scary manifestation of AI in its purest form of this like big, robot that's going to kill us all. They broke it up into 50 scenes, and they give those 50 scenes to 50 artists, and they kind of collectively made it's an atrocity. Like, there's nothing good to watch here, but it's an interesting museum capsule of where was this technology 2 years ago. So if you guys just want to skim through it, I think I just want to give you context for why it's there. But and they did do it as a parody, so nobody, which is a legal right that anybody can make a parody. They were able to distribute it, and it wasn't taken down. Airhead, I think, is also interesting because that was one of the first Sora films that was really a story film. So I'm just giving you context on things you might want to watch on your own. Question? Yeah.
The museum one hybrid?
Yes. Yeah. These are just other films that I think are worth skimming through. I wouldn't flag that for today's choice. This is also because I come from documentaries. I find it very interesting. Where does AI intersect with authentic storytelling? And these are some examples from that dispatch. If anybody's particularly interested in documentaries, I can also talk about this stuff all day long. Okay, so let's choose. We can watch the Ancestor film, which is about 8 minutes long. It's a little bit longer. That's the one from Eliza Micknett. It's a hybrid production, Darren Aronofsky's production company, or the Star Wars fan fiction movie. We can watch that. I would also throw in maybe this. You want to watch Arrow? Have you seen Arrow? Okay. And okay, I would say Arrow. I think Arrow is really cool. Why did you say that? I think it's a really intriguing film. It isn't. You know what? I'm going to make sure you see a little bit of the other ones, but I'd like you to see Arrow. I think Arrow is really interesting.
What is that? Are those helicopters? What are they flying towards?
Okay.
You should really look at this. Eating, you silly cow!
As the number of arrow sightings continues to surge, the theory that our world might be virtual may soon be confirmed. The question is, who is the player? What the? Copy. Delete. Copy. Delete. Drop your weapon! What the hell? Currently, we know the arrow is singular. It seems to be treating our world as a game. People are concerned about what it might do next. It flew away. No, I got them already.
Breaking news. The good news is that Lily, the dairy cow that was enlarged, has been found. But the bad news is that she is now inside the city.
again. This time, cross the line. There are no lines anymore, no more at all. What is that? Get behind me. You dropped your weapon. They were all my teammates. Looks like that makes us teammates now.
Ladies and gentlemen, all our current actions against that arrow have been proven ineffective. I have a question I'd like everyone to think about. If you were playing a computer game, what action from an NPC would make you stop harming it? If we can't strike back, then at least we must secure a chance to talk.
Currently, the arrow has destroyed multiple cities. Humanity faces a life or death crisis, and multiple governments appear to be preparing a joint response. Take off. I hope she finds her own grassland. I hope we all make it through this. It just disappeared like something pulled it away. Well, thanks anyway. If the fighting ever stops, I hope we can be friends. Maybe the war ended a long time ago. If humanity can get through this, I believe tomorrow will be different. The next 24 hours will determine the fate of humanity. Good night, everyone, and wear your sunglasses.
That was more, sorry.
You fell behind. And where did your armor go? That's unbelievable.
So obviously there's probably some pixelation issues that come from playing this on YouTube, but I think you even saw in the other films, like upscaling is available. So if anybody reacted to some of that sort of morphing, like those are the imperfections that we all have more precision tools on. But I think that's a pretty good example of a individual creator with a lot of power at their fingertips. And I think a big idea, like, are we all living in a simulation? And somebody's take on that. I know we should take a break. Brooks is here to defend you guys and your need for breaks. I just want to at least show, this is that Ancestra film. I really encourage you to see it because I think it's a really interesting hybrid model. So if you watch anything over the weekend, I would ask you to watch that. And then again, I have like a shirt that's kind of ripping off Star Wars here. It's like this NASA meets X-Wing fighter. So it's not the first time somebody has sort of borrowed the vision of George Lucas, but I think this is a film that I'll even just show you a second of it. not the commercial. I think this just shows you where this is, and there's a lot of hate videos on this. There's a lot of people getting very angry.
Kyber crystals are what power lightsabers. They aren't easy to come by.
You can see, like, the powers are very powerful in terms of people's ability to tap into things that seemed harder to tap into. I know you guys need a break. I just want to at least point at it and make sure you guys are aware of it. Again, in USC, I feel like you should be aware of this one. There's a lot of movies here. Again, I'm zipping through because we could just spend a whole time watching, but I'm trying to give you guys a range of things that I'd like you to watch on your own. Watch as many as you want. Maybe you like all of them and you want to spend a lot of time watching them. The 2-hour film is very long. You don't have to watch all that. But I'd like you guys to watch these over the weekend. We're going to come back and we're going to get into this, like what we're going to do in this class. But let's take like 5 minutes. Is that how long we break? Is that cool? And if anyone wants to talk to me now, you can talk to me now. In this video of Will Smith eating spaghetti. So is that a familiar reference point to anybody here? Okay. And you know what's crazy? It always does this. There's something like glitching.
It's a quickest way to go from
That even though it is hyperlinked to that, I have to search for it, but it is on that slide for you. Smith spaghetti. All right. Why are we looking at this? And I promised you this is important. So this is the original. Okay, here it is. Okay, so Will Smith might even be a problematic individual. I don't know. I don't know what we think about him as a person. But he oh man, I'm not unplugged in. Shoot. About to die. This video is in the calendar of AI video. This takes us back to February 2023. The reason I'm showing it to you, in some ways, I think of this as like the cave paintings of the space. Like, I think this is like really seeing the early days of what does it happen when like humans are putting stuff on walls. It's also something that's easily dismissed. It's something that anybody looks at that and thinks that that's total garbage. And like, why would anybody who has a serious vision for a storytelling medium ever consider this stuff? The point of seeing this in this timeline is to see how much happens soon after, okay, and how fast this space is moving. This video here, has anybody seen this video? Come on, do the actual link. Are you doing what I think you're doing? This, every time this happens, there's like, it has these like latent mistakes. Hang on. Let me see if I just click on it here. Does that work? All right, it like sends you to the wrong link. Sora woman on street. Here, we'll watch it this way. This film, sorry if the glitches are annoying. This was a film that came out maybe about a year later. It's not really a film, it's a piece of video. And it's someone inside of this, the OpenAI video team called Sora that made what was then, and actually what's interesting is this Sora model isn't available to anybody. This is like the early experimental model, like Sora Alpha, that anybody that had access to it, and it was like a group of artists that were given access to it, they'll say that it's so energy or compute intensive and takes so long that in the end they made probably a better product. The point is this video was kind of like the video heard around the world. This is like I think of this as like the Mona Lisa, if those are the cave paintings. This is a video that for the first time people looked at something and said, oh, that looks like something that I might actually want to pay attention to. Tyler Perry, who apparently is also a problematic person in the courts lately, he at the time was building an $800 million studio in Atlanta and famously paused. And again, that was like this big scary moment. We're all getting replaced. I would say he was just being a responsible business person. At some point, he should make assumptions of what he's doing with $800 million and maybe thinking about different ways to imagine the near future. But the point is this was taken very seriously. And this is really, really early in the trajectory here. We're at February 24th, so barely a year later, right? God, this sort of zoom out thing's really driving me crazy. As you get through this, you'll see sort of how when Luma, which is a tool that we might interact with and might meet the people behind it. Please take me to the right link. Oh, gosh. Okay. I think that's good. This is an interesting example where the way that Sora, oh, man. Sorry, I got to log into the LinkedIn account. Sorry about that, guys. When Sora decided to create a video tool, they allowed people into their building. It was very exclusive, and they, in some ways, as a company, were very controlling on how they allowed people to put out what was being made. What's interesting to me about this video, and I might have to just go back and re-click it. Yep, okay. This was when Luma, and they have a tool called Dream Machine that does some pretty cool stuff, and we're going to probably at least interact with it this semester. They did the exact opposite. They unleashed it on the internet. They just said, everybody play with this thing, which I think is a thing to notice as people inside of a film school that are used to dealing with exclusive tools. This is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a technology and a culture that is not sort of being exclusive in its distribution. It's doing the exact opposite. So again, you can argue that the quality of this is off. At the time, this was like, oh my God, anybody can do anything. That people were taking the input image reference of an album cover and just imagining, I wonder what would happen if Bjork was actually moving on that picture. So I just show this, that this is sort of what we're dealing with. We're dealing with an internet filmmaking culture, whether we like it or not. Obviously, that bleeds into a lot of social video, which may or may not be interesting to anybody. Arguably is a place for a lot of careers and advertising is happening. But I'm showing you that this is, we're a much more porous relationship with our consumer and with the average person that can say, what about this, and try something. But it's interesting to see how these products are launching. Okay, that's 2024. It's 2 years ago. We're into the later part of that year. We're going to start zipping, but basically tools like Kling that we're going to interact with this semester. Runway was launching more. This is where the space race starts heating up. We're still looking at Will Smith level, like what am I supposed to do with that video? But then when we start looking at stuff like this was really the first image of what Google had up their sleeve. In some ways, a lot of people were like, hey, how is the company behind YouTube not at the front of this process? And this was at the end of 2020, where it's 2024, right at the beginning of 25, that we were starting to see actually pretty good looking video, right? Like when you look at this, see if it takes me to the right link. This was like the first time that we were watching actually photorealistic quality video. Okay, noticeably no audio, and we'll get to that in a second. Then we're going into the next year. That was at the end of right into 25. As we get into last year, this is where things start to really get into, and ironically enough, bananas mode. Runway, to their credit, I think did kind of kick things off with, go back to that word multimodal. Okay, so up until now, most prompting was text-based or very straightforwardly like image-based, that like take a picture of you over there and kind of animate it. What was starting to happen, which really took over this year, and you guys are absolutely going to be interacting with this momentarily, is that this Gen 4 references idea, is that Runway is now playing with the idea that when I take a picture of this, my model kind of understands what's over there. My model kind of understands what your face looks like from over here. And it wasn't perfect, but it was starting to do it. And to their credit, they kind of did it first. That your ability to manipulate, direct, and edit and create moments was starting to become not just text prompting and not just sort of like brute force until you slot machined your way into what you wanted. This was kind of the big breakthrough moment. Okay. Let's see if I can I probably have to log into Instagram. Sorry, I needed to log into all my Instagrams today. So give me a second. All right, so now we're logged in. Okay. Go back. All right, so then this was like May last year. We're already logged in, bro. Are you seriously making me do this thing? Really? We're doing this right now? I'll describe it in a second. I just can't believe this is loud. VO3, which we will all get to interact with. That's a really good video because everybody starts saying, we can talk, we can talk, we can talk. I'm having internet issues here. Let me try one last time. Actually, do you mind sending everybody this Canva link? Like, even while we're here, so we can all look at it while we're on the computer. Thank you. This doesn't work. I'll just keep talking. Yeah, I'm good for that. All right. You will watch this. Brooks is about to send you this link, and so it's on your inboxes, so you can watch these things on your computer. One last try. 389337. Oh, God. All right, this time it should work. Yeah, there we go.
Yes, we can talk.
We can talk.
We can talk.
We can talk with accents.
Oh, I think that would be marvelous.
Yes, it is very fun. But
Yes, it is very good.
It's very fun. I can. Yeah.
Okay, so the point is, the reason you guys waited is that that was the first time that you could prompt dialogue. Okay, so I could literally say, shot of guy with maroon hat. He says, I'm really tired of waiting for login screens. And it will just imagine what his voice is. It'll just decide what he might sound like. And it'll create the sound of the room. It'll think about how that reverberates, given whether or not we have sound walls. You might even imagine the background sound. Okay, again, it's kind of just guessing, and it's not perfect enough for filmmaking yet. But when you start seeing the boom of advertising that came right after this tool, like literally when that PJ Ace guy that I showed you before that had that rant about AI bro stuff, like his company was born off this tool because he could now make 30-second ads for NBA finals and make millions of dollars off of this ability. Okay. So now we're into sort of the slipstream of last year. Midjourney, which will meet as an image generator, finally added video. The big sort of turning point that happened right around the fall last year was this tool, Nano Banana Pro. We're going to spend a lot of time with it. Nano Banana Pro is an image model. And now that it's inside of Gemini, which is an LLM, you're dealing with an image model that has the brain of like a ChatGPT level state-of-the-art language model. So that is the superpower that we're all dealing with. This is how fast everything's going. This is the fall of last year. This is the middle of my class. Really, by end of last year, before we all went away for Christmas and New Year's, the other big drop was Kling, that they added a couple massive new updates that we're also going to play with in this class. But you're starting to see this ability to get even closer to something that doesn't look like Will Smith eating spaghetti. This is a deeper dive into VO3. The reason I really want you to pay attention to VO3 is because this is a tool that we're going to have for free. We're going to have in this class, and I think our previous class had, but this is like rocket fuel in terms of endless free credits for you guys to make a bunch of stuff. And we're going to spend a lot of time learning how to use. We're going to even meet the Google team. They're going to come and give us a walkthrough. This is that commercial. When I was telling you that people are making like crazy commercials off this stuff, please work. Test things out next time. This is an example. Please work, please work. There we go. This is
Indiana got that dog in them.
Will egg prices go up this month?
I think we'll hit $20. How many hurricanes do you think we'll have this year? Kelsey lets you legally trade on anything, anywhere in the U.S. KC.
I don't recommend anybody gamble. But this, I mean, let's look at the date on this. 7 months ago, so roughly May, this was like within weeks of that VO3 tool being dropped. His agency was up and running. He made this commercial in a week, and it played during the NBA Finals, and he made a bunch of money. Okay, so going back to people curious about where jobs are, this is among the most obvious use cases. What does this do very well? It does unhinged very well. Okay, so that's why the social video piece of this is so obvious, is if you just want to get rage bait and crazy stuff on the internet, this is useful for that. I would like us to use it in more noble purposes than that. But this is an example of how quickly that nonsense of Will Smith eating spaghetti turns into businesses and turns into people making content. I'm not recommending the aesthetics, but to also just bring you back to what is that capability. I think this is an interesting video. Oh, please log in. Let's see if this plays.
Like, seriously, dude, you're saying the only thing standing... A girl told me we're made of prompts. Like, seriously, dude, you're saying the only thing standing between me and $1 billion is some random text?
Honestly, the biggest red flag is when the guy believed.
Okay, so a lot of people started doing these weird videos of like AI actors and acknowledging their existential bizarreness. The point is think about that comedy club. Okay, It got the timing of his joke. It got like, how do I land a joke? It got, when do people laugh? What is the breath he takes before he hits the punchline? What is the atmosphere of that room? All of that was prompted. Okay, so that is the knowledge. We keep talking about multimodal, that it understands audio and visuals. And again, what does Google have that few of these competitors have? YouTube. They have this big, giant library of infinite content. You could argue, why isn't Meta a big part of this? Because they have this thing called Instagram, and they probably will be. But I'm just saying that is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a knowledge and understanding of the world that doesn't need to be captured with microphones and cameras, for better or for worse. But this shows you why VO3 very quickly went right to the front of the pack. I mean, for the longest time, everybody was hyped on all these other tools, but it very quickly became among the top 2 or 3 main tools for most people. So that's where I think VO3 is important to us. I'm also going to show you why Kling is important to us. Again, these are all links in the deck that Brooks is sending you if he hasn't already.
It just went out to everyone.
And I encourage you guys to, this is part of your homework, to skip through this deck. And again, I'm not like quizzing you on this, but this is the foundational stuff. Kling, and we'll learn that Kling we can access through their site or through an aggregator. And we're going to get to tools for the class in a minute, but just to understand capabilities. This is like a tutorial video on what is the Kling.
I think we're going to go with that.
That's great.
Also, let me get the contract.
One last thing.
Recreate every
Okay, so this is a long-winded tutorial video, but I'm just kind of going to zip through a little bit. You're watching its ability to take a reference video, and interesting enough, like I would encourage you guys to shoot this stuff. But this video on the left is like reference video of somebody doing something, and then all he has is a still of a character. And this type of thing existed a year or so ago, where like Runway Act 2 had a version of getting your lips to move. What's interesting here is you'll notice that in this picture, they don't line up. Like that guy's off, it's like a 3/4 position, he's a little bit off. So the model is able to take the reference video of motion and apply it to the character you've created. There's like a really like a probably unsettling video where they took images of all the Stranger Things cast members and were able to just get them to do stuff that they'd never done. Again, creepy, and let's like feel weird about this stuff too. I'm just saying that's the capability. Hopefully those people and their identities are protected by at least their lawyers. But I'm saying that's what the technology is capable of doing in perhaps more benign settings, like working with actors that you've licensed and worked with. So this is, for example, and we're going to do a deeper dive in the tutorial of this, but this is what Kling Motion looks like.
The result is a highly energetic scene. Camera movement, as usual, is mostly left to the AI. And unlike the pirate example, you'll notice the water in the background is actually animated. Quick lesson here. Always make sure your person isn't holding anything. In the first attempt.
Yeah, I'm just sort of showing you that this is a Kling thing. We're going to spend time actually learning this. But that capability is like as of December, and how good it is. And it also responds to faces. As you upload video, it comes with voices that you can either keep the lip sync, or you can clone a new voice that's matching that voice. This is where we're getting into acting and directing. Go ahead, sorry.
I'm really curious, like, what is the thing with the hands? Because it's an issue, like, it can be an issue in mocap too.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you know what the reason is that it's harder to like perfect fingers or get fingers to be consistent or get them to like hold?
I mean, they've gotten a lot better. I mean, I'd say like those are among the sort of the benchmarks because we used to have 6 fingers in AI. It's gotten a lot better. Again, all this stuff, you're often seeing the best output, by the way, the same way that you often shoot lots of takes on set and keep the good one. So I'm just saying, like, you're often re-rolling it and sort of perfecting the prompt or to get the output you want. It's interesting that hands and sometimes these other things that we take for granted that humans do, like move their faces, are so easy to do with regular humans. But in some ways, it is getting a lot better. Again, what this tool is doing is that it's mocapping, that it's allowing you to then capture the face, capture the body, and capture the fingers. But we're going to spend more time with this tool. I'm just showing you why Kling is at the bleeding edge of where we've gotten to on this trajectory, where things started with Will Smith and his spaghetti eating. And just to put that in context, and I don't think we're going to spend a lot of time with Sora 2, but I want to just show you why I want you to keep consuming the news cycle. Sora 2 is pretty controversial in this space because they ran through copyright and they ran through other people's IP. This is like an example of a more established AI filmmaker. This kind of shows you what Sora 2 does. Has anybody here interacted with Sora 2? Okay. I'll explain Sora 2 in a second. Sora 2 is a very different thing. Okay. It's obviously a video model, but you see all those edits we're looking at? It's also editing. It's adding music, it's adding score, it's adding dialogue. It's the agentic filmmaking thing that we started talking about at the beginning. It's also in like 10 to 15 second bursts. That's not really usable. But again, think about Will Smith and spaghetti. Like, okay, here's this nonsense that I want to dismiss. Imagine the amount of money that is pouring into this space and how much, if you can imagine it, someone is trying to figure it out. So if you can imagine, well, what if this level of filmmaking was promptable? Like, yes, to Samuel's first question at the beginning today, like, yeah, this is going to be available. And I can show you a couple other tools that are very literally building businesses around this idea. Is that actually an interesting filmmaking experience? Is that the kind of thing that audiences want? Like, we're in a discovery phase here, but these are the capabilities. I'm more interested in tools like Kling Motion. And so where you're still operating like a filmmaker in terms of making choices and then running with your vision rather than just slot machining it. But this is a capability. Now, why is this interesting and why do we take a look at it? And by the way, to acknowledge it, this is the same tool that like started putting images of Martin Luther King out in the world as if he's speaking on the Lincoln steps saying nonsense. So I question the judgment at companies like this that think that that was okay. They actually put it on the estate to reach out to them to say, I'd like you to take that down, please. And they finally did. So the difference with Sora is that if you were to download it now, it's an app like TikTok. It is natively a social video type experience. The difference is that you can make stuff on it. It isn't just like posting, is that you make these videos. You can put your face in it. I can make a film with one of you because we both have consent and have given permission. One of you who are in our circle of consent and permission can jump in and remix it. It's creating this new idea of what a friend of mine calls peer-to-peer media. Okay, so maybe it looks like slop. Maybe it looks like a bad idea. Maybe why does the world need more social video? Maybe it's even offensive that they throw in things like Martin Luther King as a joke. But maybe it's actually playing with this other idea of a new type of entertainment that kind of resembles what happens when people do fan fiction. It kind of resembles what comment threads really are on an Amazon customer page. If people are talking to each other, people are interacting. And that's what I'm saying is that there's something else emerging here. It may or may not prove itself to be as valuable as the movie industry, but it's certainly something that is unexplored. And it does have storytelling. It does have visual mediums inside of it. So this is an interesting thing to me. And if you think it's just me, you can see the way Disney responded. That in a span of a short amount of time, they just got over it and said, we're going to do a deal with OpenAI over this tool, and we're not just going to have people rip us off and have to sue them. We're just going to do a deal with this and be a part of it. So this isn't just theorizing. You're watching the same way Suno just jumped into business with Warner Music. At some point, people call it hedging their bets or call it seeing the opportunity. And as film students, I encourage you to interrogate that and think about where does this benefit you? How do you get ahead of that curve? How are you more nimble than even these giant companies? But that's where I say, what do we learn from Will Smith and spaghetti is that if you can imagine it, it's probably possible. And you either get a chance to try to build it or try to assume it as you think about the eventual growth of the types of stories you want to tell. So that's kind of like a thing that I'm going to bring up a lot over the semester is like when we look at some of these new tools, like resist that instinct to dismiss it. You know, and maybe wonder out loud, well, what does this look like if it actually did what it's supposed to do? And assume either somebody's working on it or that might be your vibe coding solution. That might be the thing that you create that sort of lets you start making the movie you want to make. This will be homework. This is a video this guy Bilal will also do. He is a like a TED AI kind of podcaster guy. He made a really great video at the end of last year. It's like maybe 30 minutes long, where he literally just walked through all the trends from last year and just started predicting trends for next year. I just want you guys to watch this. I'd like us to talk about it top of next week, where I want to see which things confused you, which things made absolutely no sense, which things you agree with, which things you're theorizing as you think about it that way. But I think this is a good way to start putting yourself right into where we are in January of 26. I'm just going to zip through this, but this is the toolkit. Okay, this is sort of the stuff that I want you guys to start finding your curiosities. I'm going to recommend specific tools, but I want you guys to be aware of the range. So we're in fire hose mode right now, guys. If this feels like I'm overwhelming you, at least you have the Canva deck to go at your own pace. But research is probably to me my favorite part of AI, is our ability to interact with information in ways that we used to have almost like a linear limit to it. Do you guys use Notebook LM? Is that a tool that anybody is familiar with? So you will be using it because I've created a Notebook LM for our class, and I'm going to share it with you. That basically Notebook LM, here, we're going to take a look at it. Notebook LM is a study guide tool. I'm surprised you guys haven't used it because it's being targeted. You guys are its target market. Where is it? Here we go. So it's a free tool. Nobody has to pay anything. It is available to everybody. And then I just have to get everybody's emails and invite them to this. So for example, here is these are a bunch of resources. Okay. These are things from my last semester. These are like, I'm pulling PDFs off of the internet when somebody's like, how to use Kling. These are just a bunch of resources for you guys that you can either then look at individually or then track down individually. The way I add stuff here, you see add sources. This is what I would recommend you guys doing for your own classes outside of this. You can drop in anything from a YouTube video, actual files, copy text, actual files. And then what's different is like we're all a little suspicious of the LLMs, right? Like they hallucinate. They kind of go beyond their knowledge base. Can I really trust this thing? The beauty of this is only interacting with what I uploaded. Okay. So all of these things, when I then go into the chat window in the middle, okay, when I go here, how do I use Kling? My vision isn't what it used to be. It's now like a chat experience like ChatGPT is, but it is only interacting with the sources. Okay? Okay, and from a research point of view, the beauty of it is that then as it even pulls these up, here's all the references. Okay, so I don't even have to trust it. I can actually go directly to the reference. And now it's taking me to the file that I gave you. Okay, so this is a tool I'm going to give you guys. So as you're going on your own journey or as you're recapping anything that we talked about, you will have access to this Notebook LM. But I'm pointing it out because I actually think in the category of as you build stuff for yourself, as you build your own, like I don't know what your films you want to make look like. Maybe they're more based on history. Maybe they're based on a true story. Like instead of you just having to constantly go back and forth from your references, you load them into here. And then as you're writing your script, as you're trying to think about a visual, you're constantly interacting with it. You're having that ChatGPT moment, but with your sources. Okay. Has anybody done deep research before? Has anybody ever used that tool? I feel like I'm giving you guys all the goods here. All right. So in ChatGPT, and we're going to talk about whether or not we're using ChatGPT or Gemini, I frankly would encourage you to consider both. And we'll talk about money in a second. But in ChatGPT and Gemini, and frankly in all the major LLMs at this point, one of the things they offer you, one of the settings is this deep research tool. Okay. So what is deep research? Unlike I just ask it a quick question and we've gotten used to the fact that it's reasonably trustable. I do encourage everybody to fact check anything they would ever publish off of an LLM. But when you do a deep research, okay, and this came out about a year ago. So for example, what it does is it then spends about 20 minutes. It even asks you, here's my research plan. What would you like me to do? We can slow down and do this, but I'm just describing it to you in case we want to spend time. You can say, hey, I want to learn about near-death experiences. I want a historical perspective on this. I want to know what the Egyptians used to think about it. I want to know if there's any testimonials of people that just had it happen to them last month. I want you to scour the internet. I want you to do what Google does, but I want you to do it like industrially. Okay, and it isn't just a quick reply. It'll say, all right, I'll be back. Go get a coffee, some version of that. And it'll then come back and it'll give me this report. Okay, so this becomes by some accounts, a PhD level report and summary of what I'm interested in. So again, for anybody that wants to do a film based on a true story, instead of you having to go read those books, scan them, or whatever it is you do to sort of gather your sources, you can do this as like step one. And the beauty of it is look at all the sources on the back end. Got all the links. Okay, and then put this back in the Notebook LM. This then becomes a source document that you can then put into Notebook LM. That then not only do you have this to read, you have this to refer to. Okay, so I'm just zipping through this. I'm happy to spend more time, but I think research is among the least threatening and most exciting utilities of AI. There's historians that will tell you that this is changing the way we tell stories. That if I'm a historian, there's a guy called Stephen Johnson that works with Google that is part of the Notebook LM project. He's a regular historian. He'll tell you that he wants to go do a book about the gold rush. Okay. And there's like, all right, well, somebody's already written a really good book. This is the book. Okay. This is the book about the gold rush. It's like 500 pages long. He's like, he will scan that or have the PDF available, put it into Notebook LM. And then he'll be like, but I need a fresh take. And I'm actually more interested in the untold stories of the gold rush. I want to know about what nobody's ever talked about. I went to the Library of Congress and I found all these files of all these like testimonies of indigenous people that lived through the gold rush. I don't have any time to read these things. And maybe I should, but there's a lot of them and I have the files. He inputs the PDFs into Notebook LM. And then in the chat window, he can literally say, what's in this book that's not in those books? Which part of this story is not told? And it's over here. Okay, now I'm interacting with information. I can start finding my story. I can start thinking about what's my angle? What's the thing that hasn't gotten enough attention? To me, that is just like magic. And I think that is when, like, as much as we should interrogate a lot of this other copyright stuff, the research stuff to me proves that there are at least utilities. Okay. All right. I'm done talking about research. And again, that is agentic research. I just want you to start connecting the dots. That ability for it to go do stuff. Again, think about what agents do. They don't just give you feedback. They then go onto the internet and assume, oh, you gave me this plan and I'm going to go put together a plan and I'm going to give you a report. That is agentic research. And that's why I start to think about how this applies to the other stages of the craft. We're going to zip through LLMs, but these are kind of best practices for LLMs. Ethan Mollick is an interesting guy, interesting follow. He's on the list of people I gave you. He's a Wharton University Business School professor. He was in some version of this position when ChatGPT first landed and everybody started cheating on everything. And that was the big panic attack that all college professors are going through. He said, I want my business school students to get an edge. And he completely shifted. And he said, okay, I'm actually working with this and I want to figure out what is the opportunity here. So he's a very interesting thought leader, not a data scientist, not someone from the inside of these companies, just genuinely a high level college professor who's thinking about this for his students. He wrote a really good book. I really encourage you guys, if you're really trying to apply this to your careers in your life, it may even be slightly outdated. It's a year or so old, but it's a book called Co-Intelligence. You can literally listen to it in 5 hours. It's a very fast audiobook. And it's a really good book that lays out what is this LLM thing and how's it affecting our lives? Unrelated to film. Like this is just like, let's think foundationally. So I encourage you to think about it this way, but he has these basic principles that as you think about applying AI over the next several months, like anytime you're approaching something, well, what can AI do? Just invite it to the table and just see what's possible. Keep the human in the loop. Then as you invite it to the table, think about those vital checkpoints. Think about that moment you're hitting publish, that now your name is on this. Think about that balance. That's the new relationship we have here of how you interact with this capability, but still keep your sanity. Treat it like a person. What does that mean? Like you're always role playing with these things. And that's gotten better. It's increasingly intuitive as these tools have a sense of memory and they remember who you are and they have the context of what your conversation is. But if I really want marriage advice from ChatGPT, I will get better results by saying, you are a marriage counselor. I'm in trouble with my wife. She thinks I didn't do the dishes last night or whatever it is. I will have a more direct exchange with my chatbot by giving it a role to play and giving it a context. If I say, you are my creative assistant and I'm writing a screenplay for a 3 to 5 minute film about, medieval times or whatever it is, it will be more focused. It will kind of get there anyway because these things are getting smarter, but I'm encouraging you to always think in terms of context. Okay. As you bring this tool into your life, imagine it. It's not just a robot. It is this superhuman that doesn't sleep, never says no. It might even say yes too fast. But you are there to give it direction. You're to give it support so that it understands how to help you. And that's when you start to really get the most out of it. And you're not relinquishing control. It's doing what you need out of it. So anyway, I'm just giving some foundational stuff on LLMs. Again, provide context. Encourage questions. And I'd say this is one of those things that when you start to do it, you actually start to enjoy it. Like insert in your prompt. Ask me clarifying questions about what it is that I want. And I'm going to show you as we apply this to tools for filmmaking. Have it interrogate you. Have it find out, what vision do I want? What don't I want? And have it get to a point that you're like, oh, okay, I finally got something out of this. So again, this is how you build a different relationship with the LLMs. Now we're getting into content. Has everybody heard of 11 Labs? Okay, so we'll spend time with this and we'll learn about this more in 2 weeks. 11 Labs is a generative audio tool. We'll take a quick look at it. This is increasingly these things, as you saw, VO3 has that effect that it gives you dialogue. So it's possible that in the near future, you may skip this step. But when I say I want you guys to have precision and control over this, 11 Labs is a tool that allows you that in spite of the choices that it's making for you, you know how to go back and get what you want out of it. So this is the interface. We're just going to take a quick tour of it. We'll spend more time. But this is on the audio side. Okay. There's there's 2 different platforms if you guys are interested. There's this agents platform, which when you think about all these like consumer bots and like sort of conversational AI experiences, this is one of the settings to create that. That's what the agents platform is. It's where you create things like knowledge bases, like what's the brain based on, like what's the Martha Stewart, knowledge of cooking. that then allows that bot to teach me how to make a piece of bread. But we're not dealing with that as much. I'm happy to talk about it. The creative platform is where we do most of our work. There's literally a world of voices. You may have even heard that Matthew McConaughey recently did a deal with 11 Labs to have, his licensed voice available for people to use it. That's been their core business all along. And a lot of these people are real humans that have donated their voices. A lot of these things are clones. There's absolutely people gaming this system to fake celebrity voices. They are trying to create guardrails to prevent that. But yes, this is that gray area that this is how it happens. They don't want that kind of business. And if anything, there's a lot of layers where they try to resist it. There's a lot of open source stuff that does it happily. And you can imagine what the internet does with its free speech. But that's what this tool does. This gives you audio. It gives you text to speech where you can literally just type in dialogue or words and it'll just have a voiceover. I am teaching a class at USC. I then pick Rachel's voice. We generate speech.
I am teaching a class at USC.
Okay, obviously
I am teaching a class at USC.
Obviously that sounds a little robotic. There's different audio models that make it sound more human, allow you to give more control. Okay, that's generative audio. Again, I promise you we're spending more time with these. I'm just trying to show you the whole landscape. There's voice changer, which is another way that I can use my voice as a prompt. So I could do this. I can bring this in. I can do record audio. I could start. I'm teaching a class at USC. Okay, so I used my performance, right? And this time it's Rachel again, generating speech.
I'm teaching a class at USC.
Okay, so just giving you a small taste where that's multimodal. It's using my audio. It's not using text. Okay, and more importantly, as you start thinking about whether you didn't like that audio that VO3 gave you, it gave you that funny unhinged voice of the guy in the jet ski, but no, my character sounds totally different. This is where you would get to swap it. You would grab that audio from that old thing and it would change it to whatever you want it to be. Go ahead.
Really is just for replacing or existing voice, like the voiceover almost?
It's up to you. Again, you can imagine all the explainer videos on the internet. There's entire social media influencers that just take entire scripts, drop it into text to speech. They have their chosen cloned voice, and that's how they're making mass content. And once you start automating this stuff and putting it on an agent workflow, you're never doing anything. Like you're literally just like generating content, turning it into audio files, making explainer videos. You can even throw some lip sync in there and you've just created 10 episodes of a show. That's like the slipstream of crazy, but it is voiceover. It's influencer, dialogue that people are even faking their avatars with. But where I'm putting this into a filmmaking process this is where you would choose the sound of your character's voice. Let's say you're doing an animated film. You're doing something that's a little bit more fantastical. Here's where you get to create your voice instead of having to hire actors. Here's where, and this is where we're going to get to in 2 weeks. You guys know Andy Serkis, like the guy from like Lord of the Rings? Like, I really think that's the avatar here, guys. Like, you can make an entire ensemble movie by yourself if you're an interesting actor and you're actually good at it, even better. That your face can be 10 different people, your voice can be 10 different people. You can make your entire movie. And at the very least, previs your movie. Maybe that offends you that you're putting your actor friends out of work, but you can at the very least previs and sort of see your movie and not just as a script or a pitch deck. But this is that tool that lets you hear it. For what it's worth, they do have an image and video interface. I think it's a little basic. You can play with it. We're going to talk about where this sits on our investment level. There's also voice isolator tools. Like, let's say you have existing audio and you just want to clean it up. So this is also like a post-production audio tool. So that's audio. I'm sorry, did somebody have a quick question?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
We learn all those programs, which means we need to purchase.
I told you we're going to talk about money in a second. And some of these have free plans that we're going to be able to take advantage of. This is the generative music suite. We're going to talk more about this when we get into post-production, but these are the tools that people are creating those Spotify accounts that are making a lot of money. Or this is where you're going to create your score, or this is where you're going to find that song that is like the underlying thing. And there are licenses to these things. These aren't just sort of like pirated radio. There's a business behind these increasingly as those lawsuits settle. This is the video suite that's constantly growing. We're going to primarily interact with Flow, but as you guys just become conversant, I want you guys to have this deck as a resource so you can sort of recognize these names when you see them pop up in the press. Dramina is an interesting one that I'm going to ask us to consider a couple times. That's this other tiny company called ByteDance that has this other tiny project called TikTok. When you think about that relationship between a data library and their tool, I'd say that jokingly, that I think they're actually a meaningful player. Like to me, Dramina, CDance, and Flow and Kling are probably the three most meaningful tools right now. But they're all very good. It's crazy. Like when you look at that Will Smith video and you see what everything's capable of, we're in a time of abundance, and I think probably soon to be a time of a lot of consolidation because the world doesn't need these many redundant tools. And then these are more video models. Again, I'm just showing you this to you for to be conversant. Luma Dream Machine is one that we are going to learn a little bit about. I know the team behind that. We'll probably have them come into class. They just took on $900 million from the Saudi fund. I think they got things coming, and I think it's worth getting to know their tool. This is the image side of things. Okay, I'm sort of doing this slightly reverse order because I wanted to show you video. Image is really like, it used to just be storyboarding. It used to be just this thing that it let me imagining. Image is really your pre-production stage. Like this is where we're going to be creating these things called keyframes. And this is where we're going to use those as, like, think like animators. These are the cells that get animated into the movies we want. This is the range of tools. I'm going to encourage us to at least be exposed to Midjourney. Midjourney is definitely in its own lawsuit game, but I think while this space race is happening, I remain impressed with how incredible their aesthetics are. So from the point of view of anybody that just cares about excellence and just cares about beauty, I just want you to know about it. You can also choose not to use it, but I'm going to introduce it when we get to world building. Nano Banana Pro, also Seedream, which is the tool. Actually, I should add Seedream here. These are part of this suite of like manipulation editing. So it's not just photoshopping and like a little bit of brightening and contrast. It's where we are going to start getting into a totally different mindset of image editing. So we're going to spend a lot of time, and that's our world building stage. Go ahead, Samuel.
Midjourney are any of these like, do they allow you to actually draw out your own story?
100%. Yeah. I'd actually even say that when we get into the copyright questions, it's an interesting, call it a hack on some legal level, is that what the way that people, because again, think about that monkey thing, that monkeys are the only ones that, or they don't get copyright. If you can at least start your process with a hand-drawn storyboard, arguably you're creating that human narrative from the get. And so it's actually an interesting way to think about your process. If you guys have friends or yourselves are actually good artists, and you'll see you don't really need like hyper specific. You just need something that's almost like shapes on some level. But to answer your question, that is one of the steps that you can actually say, okay, I've created my like Knights of the Round Table, turn this into like a graphic novel illustrated style. And then you've just created that image reference step. Absolutely. We're going to keep going. In theory, and I just want you to be familiar with these words, this is what I kind of think of as the slot machine. These are these things that are literally marketing products that you're like, insert script, output film. Okay, and again, think of the social video applications, the marketing agencies, the people that move at a different clip. This is obviously a marketplace. We'll touch on this stuff, and I want you guys to be aware of it. I don't think it's as interesting for a filmmaking crowd, but again, think about this even as your sketch pad. Like maybe you guys might find interest in these tools as a way when you get into team mode that all four of you have the same take on the same sci-fi movie, but instead of having to pitch it constantly, you might just quickly whip it up. You might use Sora 2 to do that, to just say, here's a quick like sketch of what I'm going for. That's kind of what I think is still some utility for these tools. This is the other big trend you'll see in that video I'm going to ask you guys to watch over the weekend. Like 3D spatial intelligence is the like, wow, like where are we going? Like this is when we're starting to break out of even just regular movies. There's a tool called Marble from World Labs, which we're going to introduce inside of our world building section. But this is, to me, the most like, I want to hear from you guys. What is the capability here? You could just say it's like a holodeck, and it sort of looks like a Star Trek episode that we don't need to watch. I think this is a new way to sort of think about what is the output of what we're really making. I think this is where there's the most experimentation to think. We'll at least apply it into world building, but I want to introduce you guys to the tool so you can play with it on your own. For people that are really, really curious about the state of the ethical debate, and by that I mean technologically, you should learn about Moon Valley. I mean, they have their entire business proposition is that their entire data set is built on licensed content. So we can learn about that. These are other different players in that space. Firefly is interesting because on the one hand, the Adobe model arguably tells that story. Nobody really uses it. I don't know a lot of people that use it. I think it's slowly getting more adoption. To me, the issue with these ethical tools, and again, I think there's an interesting debate about ethics, is that at the end of the day, creators just mostly want excellence. So I don't know a lot of people that are actually taking bets. Now, it's possible a lot of the companies and the studios that are maybe more quietly working in the space will hear about that, but I'm just introducing it to you, and we should have a dialogue about it. I'm not skipping it right now. I'm just introducing the tool world to you. And then lastly, and this is important to our class, there's this world of aggregators. Okay, so aggregators are tools that, do you know what an API is? Like an applied programming interface, I think is what it stands for. Almost all of these tools that I just ran through have an API, meaning that you don't have to work on their interface. Like you don't have to be on the Kling website. You can just funnel Kling into FreePic or Krea or Flora or Higgsfield. Some of these you guys might even be playing with. I'm going to recommend FreePic. So I'm just going to get to, now we're getting into our classes tools. There's also Topaz. This is a production tool, a post-production tool that for upscaling. Increasingly, this is showing up in aggregators tool, but I think as you guys maybe watched that Arrow video and it looked a little bit morphy and weird, that is sort of the final step of like professional AI filmmaking, is that as much as possible, you're dealing with high-res images and you're sort of juggling better information. So Topaz is one of the leading tools for that piece. Again, you guys will have this deck as a resource. I know I'm moving at a piece, but I just want you guys to have context. Go ahead, sorry.
Does something like Topaz or something else actually, I don't want to say downscale, but like, one of the critiques might be that things look too perfect. Or so if you want things to look more, I guess, human, do any of these tools?
I think this is when like professionals go back to After Effects. And this is when you're look, this is all a virtual production model. None of this is real. So in some ways, this is just skipping ahead to many steps where you now have different material to work with. And if you're unhappy with that, then the more refined producer has other approaches. Like, you'll see that one of the big video prompts is camera shake. Like you almost like spam the video prompt, shake the camera, because they don't want that perfect, no camera does that look. So yeah, I mean, this just becomes you as a smart filmmaker noticing like, it's not quite the feeling of something I want my viewer to walk away with. So yeah, I think After Effects is one of those settings, but increasingly these things are promptable, and it's also sometimes your source image. Like that keyframe that you created is where you're first building those aesthetics. Yeah. We won't spend a lot of time here, but I just want you to be aware of the Avatar Digital Twin World. These are two of the leading tools where people are just, and it's starting to blur into storytelling. So when we get into performance, we may consider a HeyGen solution. When you guys are thinking about it, rather than prompting an actor, you may want to have like an actor that you're in total control of. So let's take a minute and just zoom out and talk about the scary stuff. And to me, this is a pulse throughout the semester. I want you guys to always express that feels weird to me, and I want to know how and then let's talk as a group about it. But like in terms of like, where has this stuff been interacting with the consumer? Do you guys know who Anthony Bourdain is? I feel like my generation left him behind. I was in a room and I was kind of sad that nobody knew who he was. Morgan Neville. Do we know who Morgan Neville is? He did a documentary about Mr. Rogers, who's also from another generation. He won an Oscar for 25 Feet from Stardom. So Oscar-winning filmmaker, Morgan Neville, when I was in the doc space, he was a get. He's a big deal to get Morgan Neville to do your film. He was brought in to do the eulogy film for Anthony Bourdain, this like national treasure that everybody was sad who died. Big deal film. Early days AI. He took 2 sentences of an email that he discovered Anthony Bourdain had sent to a friend of his, and he cloned a voice and threw it in the movie. That was it. The rest of the movie is a regular documentary. But he didn't tell anybody about it. Didn't think it was a big deal. Kind of thought he was just doing something that was true to a story. In the process of this film dropping in front of audiences, somebody kind of pieced that together. Like, wait, I've received that email. I never heard him say that. And then a New Yorker article came out that sort of, said they're using robots to bring humans to life in a documentary, and it's a dead person and he never had consent. He wasn't a part of that. Was his estate looped in? Total scandal. So if you Google Roadrunner Morgan Neville, you will see more news articles about the scandalous use of AI than how good of a movie it was, or how well it honored the subject. Okay, so obviously a total distraction to what the intentions of the filmmaker were. And I'd argue that in the doc space, we've gotten further along, and people do this all the time. The big note is we do it transparently. It's a part of the story of the film. And we could talk more about that, but also The Brutalist. I don't know if you guys followed that last year, as it was made its way through the Oscars. They similarly took some liberties with audio and generative audio to make his accent better, and they used it visually. I think it was interesting because there was a lot of angry press about it, and there's a lot of people that are like, I don't know if this matters to me. Filmmakers are making creative choices all the time. I'm not here to tell you whether any of those people are right or wrong, but I'm sort of showing you that this is what it's starting to look like as people are putting this into action. And minimally, I think the lesson learned from those two is that there is a transparency layer in the meantime. There is something that, like, while you're using these tools, it behooves your final product to sort of have a transparent process, at least in the marketing. And like, if you follow House of David, did you guys see that show on Amazon? House of David was arguably probably like the biggest kind of like show on a major streamer that like openly used AI. If you just Google it enough, and I can, excuse me, add it to this deck, I thought they did a textbook job of marketing their film and the use of AI. And it was openly talking about it. It frankly celebrated the way we usually talk about CGI and all the cool Dream Factory tricks that we use to make amazing movies. So again, transparency is the thing I want you guys to start thinking about of what, when we feel weird about this, part of it is just disclosure. There's a whole advocacy layer. And I say this to people that continue to not feel good about this stuff. I think you'll be better advocates by spending time with the tools. I think you'll have more to advocate for as you understand how they work and how they should work. This is a quick run through. There's a group called the Archival Producers Alliance that in the AI, the documentary space has really been fighting over the historical record. You know, what happens when we're generating footage of World War II that didn't exist? And we're using this technology's incredible ability to make it look like World War II footage. What does that mean to society? Who's asking that question at OpenAI? Nobody. You know, how many of those people feel fully empowered by the free speech era that everything is sort of up for grabs? So I'm just saying we're in a space that as we interact with what feels right or wrong, the advocacy piece is that other sector of society that emerges and I think works better as they remain educated. So this is a page a little bit looking at it. You may have noticed in the news there's this group called CCAI that just formed in December. It's a lot of Hollywood actors and producers. There's a huge letter of people signing on that they're trying to create their version of advocacy from the inside of the legacy industry of how do we slow this down and ask good questions. I encourage you to flip through it, and I'm happy to talk more about this over the semester, but I'm pointing to the resources to think about that stuff. On the legal side, this is a good slide if anybody's really interested in the state of the lawsuits. This link right here at the top, this is literally a tracker of all the legal cases and where they're all at. So if anybody really loves like legal intrigue, this guy, Peter Southey, has been doing a good job. These are some of the more notable cases, and I think it's interesting. Some of them are starting to settle, like Anthropic, the company behind Claude. They got hit with a $1.5 billion settlement. I mean, that's not a little bit of money. They also just got valued at like, I think 70 billion. So there's a context to this stuff. And I don't know if that's a good feeling that that's kind of a small amount of money for what they're actually making, but they are losing in court when things are being done that in ways they should have been done. Like they got in trouble because not because they trained on the data, but because the data that they put into their machine was stolen. Meaning that if they had just paid for those books online, which would have been like 20 bucks a pop, and if you did the quick math of 20 bucks a pop times, I don't know, 4,000 books, it would have been way less than $1.5 billion. So they got in trouble for a different rule. It wasn't just that you shouldn't have trained on the data, but they did get a pretty nasty bill. You know, there's other rulings with Getty Images that they're fighting Midjourney and Stability AI. They're ruling against copyright holders because there's this narrative of the transformative journey of data, that when it comes out of the machine as something totally new, does that really mean it got stolen? So I encourage us to ask questions about this stuff, but this is a resource for that interest. And again, those are those Universal Music and Warner Music Group lawsuits that kind of ended with them getting into business together, which I think is an interesting outcome for a lawsuit. It's almost like imagine a divorce and people get back to getting married when it's over. One thing to go back to the U.S. copyright, you see that link at the bottom. This is sort of where the U.S. Copyright Office tried to weigh in, and they were skewing towards not liking this stuff. And for better or for worse, Donald Trump fired the person at that office the next day, which I don't think that's like an interesting way to think about laws, but I'm saying is the world we're in right now, that for the moment, the power structures are pretty heavily weighted towards supporting the proliferation of this. You can feel weird about that. You can have your own political alignments, but I'm just showing you that this is the state of these issues, right? We're almost done, I promise. I think, why does this stuff feel weird? You know, why, whether there's lawsuits or not? It feels weird because in some stage of this stuff, this graph right here shows that when you used to prompt the word architect into an image model, it would normally be a white person. When you would type in a social worker, it would normally come out with a person of color. These are algorithmic biases. They suck. They also predate AI. These are problems, and these are things that the models, frankly, they want more customers. So they're hearing this stuff, but these are the problems with these things. This is why we are entitled to challenge this thing and look for these problems. You know, on the left is the copyright issue. Those are two virtually identical images. One of them is generated on a tool, and the other one's the tools are getting better at censoring these things out and frankly staying out of court. The fake news stuff is obvious. I think, did you guys follow, like, after Nicolas Maduro was kidnapped, or however you describe what happened to him? There's literally, like, all over Twitter, and so, like, there's just fake videos of, like, fake celebrations, things that just didn't happen. There's even people that I will introduce us as resources. One of the people on my list is this guy called Tech Hala on Twitter. He was literally posting how to make videos about this. And he wasn't doing it as, like, I'm making fake news. He thought it was cool. He's like, look at this amazing technology. I can make my own newsreel. I think it's mental. And I think as much as I think he's actually a good resource for us, like, interrogate him. I didn't, like, jump on and blow him up, but I'm just saying, like, I don't really love getting involved on social media. But I think that's a problem, and I think we should interrogate that. And then obviously the deep fake stuff. I think a lot of us are getting used to sort of knowing that that's a problem, especially with the way people are getting abused, the sextortion stuff, the way young women are getting thrown into this. Like, it's awful. And I think these are the problem areas, and we should worry about them. And again, I don't want to sound irresponsible by still being optimistic about this stuff, but I think these are the spaces that we should all have problems with, right? The environmental impact is a interesting debate. It's obviously real, but I do think it's often clouded in where the information is flowing. I think it is obvious that these data centers are insane and how many of them we're building. But these are the things that we should be worried about. And I think we should think about where does this sit into things we care about. You might also argue that a Hollywood set isn't the most, like, organic sort of, like, environmental choice in the world in terms of how many resources are thrown into flying a bunch of people into another country with honey wagons and all kinds of stuff. So I'm not dismissing these concerns. I'm just saying we should debate them in context, and we should, I'm happy to be disagreed with on this stuff. So as we think about these things, as you go through these slides, this is a funny slide. We'll take a quick look at it. This actually has nothing to do with filmmaking, but this is Reid Hoffman. Do you guys know who Reid Hoffman is? He's a billionaire. He's heavily invested in AI. He promotes it.
It feels like I have a lot of tabs open.
But our brains are not multi-threaded.
Yeah, but
I'm here with Ali K. Miller, one of my favorite AI leaders.
Oh, thank you, Reid. I'm really excited to be part of this experiment. We have the scribe, the researcher, the skeptic, the accelerator, and the historian.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll pause there. But the point is that as they were early days exploring the way these LLMs work, they basically created their own writer's room. Like, you can assign roles to different voices in your LLM conversation. And as you create your own sort of table read of a script, we can talk about how you would execute. They did it for show with, like, 7 different phones, but you can create those roles in your process. You can now imagine, oh my God, I wish Albert Einstein was in my room right now to help me think about this story that takes place during his life. You can bring him in, some version of him that will be better than your imagination. That's a capability of using just even the language model into your process, right? We can look at the way that there's new assumptions for production. Like, why bring newborn babies on set anymore? Why did we ever do that and think that was a good idea in the first place? Okay, that movie Ancestra that you guys should watch, that's a fake baby. Like, if you watch the behind the scenes, she's just holding her hands in midair, and they generated that baby into her arms. Okay, why are we putting animals on set? Why are endangered animals ever being brought into, like, a human workplace? You can start generating your animals. These are different types of assumptions. Why do stuntmen exist? Why do we have to risk anybody's life? But maybe the movie wants to do that, but you don't have to do it anymore. Like, if you need somebody to fall off the building, you can just throw them off the building and they don't actually have to be there. If you need that exterior shot that your production ran out of time and we didn't get that nighttime exterior shot, just generate it. Like, we don't need to go spend a bunch of money to just go get that exterior shot of somebody's house. So these are new production assumptions, okay? So think like a producer. This is a filmmaker called Michaela Ternaski-Holland. She's very, sort of very in the space. She introduces this term of viability. Like, that's kind of what this journey of playing with these tools, of how quickly you're getting to experiment with the ideas and the visuals. You're actually on a viability journey. We just interviewed her for Machine Cinema. I'm happy to share that interview with you guys if you want to see her. Animation is now available in a way that you needed to spend lots of money and work with really hard to access studios. Probably more than anything, if anybody in this room is passionate about animation, this is the biggest like signal in terms of how much You don't even have to worry about copyright in the same way because you're going to create your own images, perhaps with your own storyboards, with your own hand-drawn images, and you're starting to bring those to life in a totally different way that is accessible to you. Like those are some of the film that won that big billion follower summit. That was an animated film, by the way. There's even sort of upside down ideas like deep fake for good. How do you use that horrible technology to protect the identities of subjects in a film, like LGBT victims in Russia whose families will kill them for being gay, but they're being shuttled to safety by an underground railroad of sorts. This is a documentary called Welcome to Chechnya. And they use deep fake technology to allow the viewer to now experience that story in a way that protected their identity. And what's interesting is even the fake faces that they use in that film were LGBT activists from New York. So even the inside out of the choice has an interesting documentary choice. So I'm just saying, this is where we're seeing filmmakers step in and saying, how do I use this for something more interesting? The idea of talent, some of you may have heard of this Tilly Norwood kind of character that's, I could spend a lot of time hating on how stupid this story is. But the point is that, you know, Tom Hanks is now in a movie where he is himself in 50 different years of his life because of AI technology. Al Michaels, sportscaster, if you guys listened to the Olympics a couple years ago, on the internet, if you wanted to get a recap of like your favorite sport, not just whatever recap they made, I just want to know about gymnastics, they would generate his voice to give you a recap of that day's events. Okay, that starts to get into personalization. Now we're getting into the idea that this technology creates new user experiences. And as long as he's on board and his agents are on board, which they were, this becomes a new setting. This becomes a new idea. I already know of some projects where there's like aging actors that are literally putting themselves in younger versions of themselves. And it's a good gig for them. Like it's good money. They can now suddenly also be in multiple movies at once if you really start to scale that idea, right? So highlights of this course. I'm really trying to get to the end. These are the fundamentals, in my opinion. We're going to, in the next 5 weeks, learn about basic pre-production, like writing, research, and prepping and creating your home base for your project. We're going to learn about character creation, which is going to get us into performance, voice, faces, personalities. How do we actually cast our stories the way that we need storytellers inside of our stories? World building. How do we go from just storyboarding to entire landscapes that we can start to really manipulate and sort of inhabit? And then ultimately this idea of visual storytelling. So what do we do with our cameras inside those spaces? How do we start to use these different amazing video gen tools to sort of do really, really interesting things that would normally be impossible? For example, like the guy in the helicopter and the zoom in on his eyeball from the ground to him, you can do that move in a way that no helicopter will accidentally crash and kill anybody. Those types of camera moves are now things that we can start to think about differently. There's going to be some post-production where we talk about music and topaz and upscaling. What are those sort of fine polishing steps? And then I want us to keep an eye on the spaghetti, because like we might see some things pop up in the next few months that inspire us and make us start thinking about, wait, maybe this is changing before our eyes. And I want us to always have that humility. This Canva deck is going to be available to you. I'm going to send that Notebook LM thing to you. We're going to invite you guys all to a WhatsApp group that as much as you guys want to lurk and just watch me post, or if you guys want to be a part of a conversation, I'd love you to be. We're going to be using a Google Drive to submit things. I think Brooks will help us with that. And then I did experiment, and we'll talk about this more in next week. I did create a custom GPT for storytelling, and I'm going to see if that's useful to you. You guys can ignore it entirely, but I did make that free. These are the core tools, and we can revisit this next week, but I want you to at least buy one thing. So let's talk about money for a second. You guys have no lab fee. There is no lab fee for this class. Okay? As I understand it, sometimes other classes have like a $300 lab fee or something like that. You guys are going to get Google Flow Ultra, which is, in my world, like that is like dreamland of getting $250 value per month for free. You're getting that for 3 months. That's going to start on February 8th so that it takes you to your final film. So you will have that as like unlimited credits, and you'll see incredible capabilities in it, and you will get a lot out of that tool. Over the course of this course, I'm going to introduce you to a lot of tools. I'm going to recommend some of them being things that I think you guys should consider looking at that $300 that maybe you're telling your parents you just save that and you don't have to spend $300, or maybe that's your slush fund to make your way through these choices. I would consider doing a month of Midjourney, for example. I would consider doing a month of some of these other tools, and we'll make those choices as we go along. But for now, while we're waiting for Google Ultra to come on in a few weeks, I'd like you to start getting used to FreePick. So take a look at FreePick. There's like a premium plan. We'll put this in the email to be specific, but try to get your first month. It might be $40. And maybe even try the smaller version and upgrade if you really want to be careful. But that's where we're going to be able to do a lot of our image work. That's for Nano Banana Pro. And you'll see we're going to walk through FreePick. There's a lot of stuff in there. Figma, I'm pretty sure the free tool is available, and you guys don't have to spend any money on that. And I'm assuming everybody has some type of access to Premiere or CapCut or Resolve. Is that everybody can edit? Yeah? Is that a thumbs up? Is anybody not editing? Let's start there. Okay. If you have any problem with that, Resolve and CapCut are free. So for some reason that doesn't feel right. These are other tools. We're going to have Google Flow, but I'm going to introduce you to Kling, which you can access through FreePick. Again, that's why that FreePick account is a bit of a catch-all. Germina, I'm going to show it to you guys. Somebody might really like it, and I would encourage you to really like it. There's some cool features inside of Germina. The nice thing about Kling and Germina is they're less censored. So for people that want to do horror movies, stuff that's a little bit more adult themed, and I don't mean sexy, I just mean stuff that Flow is very conservative. Flow is a little bit more vanilla. So you may get frustrated with Google and their model that sometimes it doesn't let you do a more adult themed movie that's made for R-rated audiences. Rev we're going to meet as another option for the image model. Again, you're going to make these choices along the way. The only one I'm pointing you towards is FreePick right now, and having an LLM. You guys need to choose at least having ChatGPT. And I'm going to show you why Gemini I think is pretty dope. You might get to do both. These are other tools we're going to meet throughout the semester. This is Flow. This is FreePick. We talked about them. Just values. I want us to try to be agnostic about this stuff. We aren't right or wrong about these things. We're just learning. I think being curious is going to allow you to sort of overcome the uncertainty. Don't draw conclusions right away. Save that for your final essay. Like, let yourself not know for a while, because I think that's the space of this class. We're going to, be inclusive of opinions. I'm not selling you anything. You should tell me I'm wrong about everything if you don't like what we're saying. And I think for that first individual project, I want you to just really think about what's something that's impossible to make. At least allow yourself to love that about AI, is that it's letting you do things that you couldn't do before. And then we can move backwards on what things you want to do. And then as we work together, it'll be what's possible. Okay, zipping through these things. Maybe we'll come back to this next week. I know we're at the end of class. We have 1 minute. Yeah, I'll come back to this next week. Any quick questions while we're here? How's the fire hose feel? I'm turning it back down a little bit. It's just a trickle, a little water fountain now. How do we feel? Are we interested? Are you guys gonna be back here next week? You guys